Chapter 11. A Fated Meeting. Published by Ranobes. One Piece, Path to Power. 2,500 words. Boom. A loud explosion echoed through Renaissance Island as a giant sea king attacked the bay. Moonwalk. A black shadow jumped on what seemed to be air as it reached 50 meters in height. The shadow resembled a young man as he shot forward from the sky and toward the sea king. His fist was coiled back, ready to shoot forth. Oddly enough, the fist was soon wrapped with a dull sheet of black armor. The youth's fist went on and slammed onto the sea king's dome. Bam. A quick shockwave erupted as a fist dug into the skull of the beast. Roar. It roared in pain and fury, its eyes dimmed as blood splashed from its cracked open skull. The young man landed on the ground with a thud, his black fist returning to normal. A few large chunks of flesh were about to rain on the red-eyed youth as he instead aimed out his right index finger. Flying finger pistol barrage. Zip FWIP **zip. An onslaught of air pockets shot out from the tip of the finger as they were nailed into the raining meat, causing it to explode in the sky. This way, not even a speck of dirt landed on the young man's body, allowing him to casually walk away. He had medium-length black hair with red streaks running down the left side while fashioning a thin scar above his right eye. The crimson pupils carried firmness and great ambition. Damien, who had cleaned up a rather large sea king, had been preparing himself to depart from his home island. Having spent 2 more years in hardcore training, he was ready to sail the seas and take another step towards his path to power. The years of training and an incredibly healthy diet had led to a sizable growth for the now 16-year-old. Damien's body was muscular and brimming with power, enough to send just about any lady from his back home into a coma from just a peek. He had grown rather handsome as well, perhaps the genes of a dryad could be considered quite enviable. Image of Damien, in Discord. Sybil, bring up my stats, it's been quite a few chapters since I've seen them, he said. Coming up. Ina D. Damien. Age, 16 years, 2 months, 4 days. Height, 10 feet 1 inch, 3.07 meters. Status, thriving. Devil fruit, pulverized fruit, nigh intermediate mastery. Fruit rating, 6.5 stars. Sea stone resistance, 56.6%. Skills, rapid recovery, plus, beastly vitality, plus, evolable anatomy, natural conscience, plus, will of D, Rokushiki. Hockey, observation hockey, intermediate mastery, armament hockey, initial mastery. Strength, bottom tier Yonko commander, Tilda Brook, Tessera level. Yet again the feeling of pent-up power had arrived after the 2-year training session. Both the physical and spiritual growth had led to feelings of a flood of power building up. Damien jumped straight into concentrating his body into a meditative posture as he felt the growth in bodily capabilities. His bones and tendons hardened as the flesh strengthened and solidified further. The blood vessels dilated as the muscles devoured energy for their evolution. Rapid recovery has evolved into lightning recovery. Beastly vitality has evolved into mighty vitality. A wave of heat passed through the young man's body as his eyes sharpened with his newfound power. Lightning recovery, 3 times the speed of rapid recovery. Mighty vitality, 3 times the durability of beastly vitality. He had grown in strength once more. Damien gave a wry smile. Even with this recovery and vitality, I still pale in comparison to the real monsters out there. Kaido's acclaimed invulnerability, Big Mom's steel balloon and Whitebeard's absurd vitality, he listed to himself, people vastly beyond himself. Though it could be considered a step in the right direction. This feeling, Damien muttered as he felt his senses feel rather constrained. It was something that he had felt throughout the past few months as his observation hockey had continued to grow. Not long ago he raised his observation to intermediate mastery. Essentially it allowed him to further his range of hockey and allow him to sense finer and sharper movements. The main point was that the feeling of observation was similar to his natural conscience, which gave him the ability to converse with nature. The same feeling of evolution was present. His mind felt overwhelmed with newfound senses as the world slowed down around him. The voices, the sounds, and the whispers of life were all magnified to the nth degree. Damien groaned in discomfort, grabbing his head. And then came a ding in his mind. Natural conscience has evolved into voice of all living things. Damien subconsciously took in a deep breath as the voices of trees, grass, and greenery were mixed with the voices of the animals, birds, and even insects. This is like the voice of all things used by Roger, Luffy, Odin, and Momonosuke, he murmured. But mine only hears living things. Perhaps as my observation grows in mastery, I can take this skill to the level of Roger, Damien surmised. However, the feeling of progress was quickly dispelled as Damien clenched his hand. *FWWM. The same sound of armor being plated went off as a dull black sheet of metal was wrapped around his hand. My armament hockey is barely worth talking about. Staying here any longer will be a waste of time. The same was true with his devil fruit. The thing was that training his body could only increase his stamina, which would then increase his fruit ability usage as well. But it wouldn't increase his mastery of the devil fruit to the next level. A few hours later, Damien had familiarized himself with his new abilities and made his way to the heart of the island. The one area he visited almost every week to remind himself of his past weakness. Damien heard the welcome from the nearby nature as he sat down in the soothing land. The well he once hid in had broken down though was filled with water after years of no usage. He gazed at the grove of trees that formed the portrait of his mother. Still the same over the past 9 years. The scene was a mix of nostalgia and old pain. After a few silent moments, Damien stood up from his seat and touched the warm bark of the tree. You told me to live, he murmured. I will put everything I have on the line to stand where no one can push me down. Under the solemn face of the young man were the 2 crimson pupils that seemed to glow in response. It was a flash of pure ambition. What Damien didn't know was that deep down in his mind was a whirlwind of wild currents that churned all over, like a hurricane building up, waiting to free itself from its confines and break the chains that shackled it. I'll be back, one day. A while later. Goodbye, Renaissance Island, the red-eyed youth muttered as he unfurled the sails of the broken-down ship that was once under the control of the Gambino family. Damien held up a crinkly map in front of him, adjusting the ship to head east at full speed. The weather was quite nice and a smooth journey was expected. The West Blue was known for its 5 mafia families and 2 major sites that Damien was familiar with. Ohara, where the Tree of Knowledge was rooted, and Kano Country where Don Chinjao hailed from. However, Damien had no real reason to go to either site as of now, rather his goal was somewhere else. Severa Island, the island right before the Reverse Mountain, kinda like the Loga town of West Blue, Damien thought out loud as he read the name of the island. 11 days later. Severa Island, West Blue. A 16-year-old young teen walked through the crowd of hundreds under the joyous atmosphere. Bright and clear skies, flocked with the island's inhabitants. All one could hear was their endless chatter. Most people here think the area to be a relatively safe and healthy society, but those with sharp enough eyes would feel the wisps of danger hidden about. As this was the island right before the Grand Line, the pirates' population here was noticeable. But there was an unofficial rule to abide by, don't make too much noise and the Marines will not bother you. Damien made his way to a small bar by the edge of the road. A few rats scurried through the side as some droplets of water dripped onto the stone road. Creak. The wooden doors parted as the young man walked into the crowded pub. Some drunk men sat near the front of the bar, talking amongst themselves. Give me some sake, Damien said casually as he sat on an empty stool. The waiter blinked as he examined his customer. Perhaps you were a little young. His words were interrupted with a subconscious gulp as crimson pupils locked onto him. Right away. The order came fast as Damien drank down the island's special drink. He wasn't an alcoholic like many pirates, rather he tasted the sake from the Gambino family a few years ago and found the taste intriguing. Slurp. He sipped down the throat-burning liquid while in thought. There were a few paths Damien could go down. He could put up his own pirate flag and traverse the seas with a crew he would need to put together. But there was a major problem. The Rocks pirates were the big dogs of the current era, and who knows what other monsters were present. Riding into the sea now would be disastrous. It's currently the year of May 1st of 1482, Damien thought to himself. The God Valley incident that led to the annihilation of the Rocks pirates happened in 1486. Damien was lost in thought as he leaned his head back. A large shadow was cast over him suddenly. And here I thought I came for a drink but ended up finding a big wad of walking berries. A grumbly voice broke out. A few tens of men soon came surrounding the young man on the stool, vicious grins plastered over their faces. Though you've grown older, you should be the kid on this poster, right? The 11-foot-tall, 3.35 meters, man questioned as he waved an old bounty. Damien glanced at the poster and simply nodded. If you want an autograph then you gotta wait for me to finish my drink. The pirates blinked and then broke into a boisterous laugh. Yababa baba, I want your head, kill him. The pirate unsheathed his scimitar and slashed down with great power. The blade cut the air and descended on Damien's neck, but the result was not what the onlookers expected. Crack. The blade shook upon impact as the force ripped it off from its handle and was shot and driven into the ceiling with a bang. A deafening silence ensued. Thunk. Damien lowered his empty cup and slowly stood up, much to the fear of those surrounding him. He was a monster 2 years ago, perhaps it's a bad idea to mess with him now, a younger pirate muttered. Damien simply cracked his neck, raised his leg and swung it around. Tempest kick, orbital slash. A near 360-degree slash of the air followed Damien's swinging foot as the collection of air raged onwards. The pirates were too slow to move as their bodies were quite literally split in half. The slash continued as the tens of pirates were halved, sending out geysers of blood to paint the worn-down floorboards. Asterisk KRRR asterisk boom. The entire bar was split in two. Crash. The building fell upon itself as a cloud of dust rose as a result. Damien looked satisfied and suddenly thought of a funny thought. Click. A pen materialized in his hand as he picked up his bounty poster. Scratch, scratch. Take this. He handed the signed paper to the quivering barkeeper. In a few years, it'll sell for a lot. The man was too frightened to speak, but he did as told, pocketing the poster. Damien stepped out from the dust cloud as the people around him simply gulped in fear. And yet something odd happened at the distance. Boom. A huge explosion shook the island as a mushroom cloud dominated the sky, sending the birds and wildlife into a panic. The people were no better, creating a stampede to escape. Damien squinted his eyes to the far end of the island. It was the pirate area. He made his way over, pushing past the hordes of citizens wanting the escape. Damien soon saw the docks that were broken and ripped apart. Dead bodies floated over the muddy sea as a large group of marines circled the ship nearby. A stench of blood mixed with the salty sea air assaulted the young pirate's nose, alongside the wailing cries of anguish and pain. It wasn't entirely clear due to the dust and fire, but Damien could make out a hulking frame on a rampage, massacring a crowd of marines. Blood splashed wildly as the marines were whittled away. Damien was watching from 100 or so meters away, but then a voice made its way to his ears. Oofufufu, I found quite an interesting person on this small island. I couldn't sense her, Damien thought in alarm, whizzing to the side to see the woman who had snuck up on him. She was only a mere 6 feet 1 inch in height but had quite the figure. The woman had short black hair, with 2 tufts pointing upwards and, casually smoking a cigarette. She wore a pink tank top with a spider motif, exposing her large cleavage for all to see. A thin smile etched on her face as she watched the young pirate in front of her with curiosity. Damien then glanced at the battle that embroiled the marines not far away. The dust had cleared, alongside the marines that were left in broken bones and ruined bodies. He saw the hulking figure responsible for the carnage. Thick, muscular arms, a simple shirt with rolled-up sleeves and a black vest over it. Long dark hair added with the 2 large horns protruding from both sides of his skull, a heavy mace in one hand, dripping with flesh and blood, a terrifying image. Though under the viscous appearance was a young face, not much older than that of Damien. These marines of the West Blue are too weak, the monstrous young man roared out with a grin. The woman then replied with a casual tone, don't expect so much from the outer seas. The large young man simply grumbled and went into the ship to fetch something. I not Damien, she said with a small smile, I've been meaning to find you. My name is Shikiyaku but my friends call me Shaki, care for a chat? To be continued. Author's Corner. Images, https://discord.gg/ajishboob6q. Chapter 12, The Status Quo. Published by Ranobes. One Piece, Path to Power. 2,200 words. Shaki, the future wife of the Dark King, Silvers Rayleigh, Damien thought with surprise. Her image, in Discord. The woman watched in intrigue, blowing a cloud of smoke. Finally, Damien spoke up, what do you want to talk about? Shaki beamed a thin smile and said, you should know whose flag we're under tilde. Damien slowly nodded and gave his thoughts, Rocks pirates. Shaki nodded at Damien's answer and slowly walked to a deserted seating area at the local cafe. The younger pirate followed suit, seating himself in front of the lax woman. A short silence arrived between the two as the background booms were apparent. Shaki's companion continued wreaking havoc in the distance. The young woman, in between some puffs of smoke, asked, do you know the major forces of the Grand Line so far? Damien shook his head. The information regarding the Grand Line, let alone the New World, was heavily controlled. The world government did not want the public to know the lack of control they had in those waters and chose to keep the status quo unknown. Shaki hummed, not surprised by the answer. In terms of pirates, there is one overwhelming force that has existed for quite some time, she said. They are called the 3 overlords of the sea. Damien squinted his eyes at the newfound knowledge but chose against interrupting. Shaki nodded with a hint of approval, before continuing. These 3 have held the reins to the New World for decades. A primitive version of the Yonko, then, Damien concluded in his mind. Thaddeus Enigma. Eso Borealis. Pride D. Sol. She then tapped her cigarette with her finger and proceeded to take another puff. The world government has 6 main powerhouses to combat these overlords. She then listed them out once more. Fleet Admiral, Strange Beast, Kong. The 3 admirals, Buddha, Sengoku, Basara, the Mountain, and Kurowashi, Masao. Alongside the 2 new rising stars, Garp, the Fist, and Black Arm, Zephyr. She then showed a slightly annoyed expression, almost that of pouting. That man ape Garp even chased me down not too long ago. What a pain he can be. Asterisk who. Damien took a deep breath as he stored the data in his mind. He was unaware of all 3 overlords and 2 of the admirals. In other words, they were extraneous to the story and ended up lost in the annals of history. Damien then picked up a vital missing piece of information. So the Rocks pirates want to challenge the status quo. Shaki smiled in agreement, giving an alluring smile. Our captain would never allow such pirates to exist. After all, his end goal goes far beyond such petty notions of balance. Though another moment and the woman's demeanor flatlined as she muttered, the Rocks pirates, to say the least, are simply a collection of pure evil. Damien saw a pang of ambivalence flash in the woman's eyes, a certain helplessness. He then addressed the elephant in the room. And you've come all the way here, why? Shaki gazed at the young man's eyes, and spoke after a second. Our captain wants to change the world, but before that, he needs a mighty ship. She continued, a ship that can carry the weight of the world. And its ingredients are rather rare. Shaki then glanced at an alley to the far right, a few seconds before a black-clothed man slowly walked out. Damien watched as the man soon stepped in front of their table. Shikiyaku, he nodded as a grey portal-like construct opened by the wave of his hand. Asterisk flonk. Large stacks of wood slammed onto the ground, piling up to a huge amount. Our deal has concluded, the mysterious man said, disappearing into a similar portal of his own. Meanwhile, Damien eyed the wood and immediately felt its great durability. Wood from the treasure tree, Adam. Shaki nodded. One of two main things we need. She then fixed her focus on Damien and smiled. I see great ambition in your eyes, Damien-chan. The young pirate in question couldn't help but twitch as he heard her way of addressing him. You should know the state of the seas is not something you can easily subvert, especially at your age. She then waved her hand. You are alone and have no one to rely on, no navigator to guide your path and no ship to carry you. Damien squinted his eyes in return. Where are you going with this? She shrugged. It's very simple. The captain took in a new apprentice on the ship a couple of years ago. I can give you that same invitation. Shaki eyed Damien's pause and flashed a smile. You bear the surname D like the captain. Plus, he favors the young and feisty Tilda. Boom. Their conversation was then interrupted, however. A large shadow dropped, throwing shards of earth out of the ground and spiking out. A dull echo boomed through the emptied area, shattering glass in its wake. Waroro, a laugh thundered out, originating from a hulking figure at the core of the crater. The deep voice came alongside a curious tone. You're the one who they suspect to become a top-tier supernova. I wasn't expecting to run into you here. Damien glanced at the grinning figure of the beast like human. It was the future emperor of the seas, Kaido. Though he didn't have his azure dragon fruit as of now, he was still an imposing figure, standing at a towering height of 19 feet, 5.79 meters. Image of Kaido, in Discord. The beast-like pirate was grinning and glaring at Damien, deep lust for battle evident in his eyes. The chair screeched as Damien stood up, matching the bone-chilling glare with one of his own, returning it to the pirate more than twice his own height. A short standstill erupted as the two young men of similar ages simply eyed one another, almost like a duel of fates. Shaki gave out a small sigh and picked up her pistol. Bang, bang, bang. 3 bullets were fired, though not someone, but rather around the piles of wood. The bullets formed a triangle that soon was connected with black lines, and soon everything inside the triangular net went purple and sucked in all the wood. The purple void-like ground soon disappeared as the wood was nowhere to be seen. A devil fruit? Shaki, as if she expected the question, tapped her gun and said with a wink, my pistol is a little special, Tilda. She then walked away from the two. I'll watch from the side as you boys play around, Shaki said as she sat by the edge of the pier. Though she seemed quite curious about the coming duel. Rumble. The ground shuddered as the 19-foot-tall monster grabbed his mace that was wedged into the ground and placed it on his shoulder. Damien smirked in return, breathing in the tense atmosphere. Bring it on, he waved. Kaido broke out in a grin and raged forward without care. Loud gong-like steps went off following the hulking mass of the pirate. The mace was raised into the sky, intending to crash into its opponent. Boom. The air whistled as the heavy weapon slammed into Damien's position. He wants to take it head-on, Shaki thought as she saw the response. Damien raised his left fist clad it in hockey and returned a punch. Clang. The sound of metal on metal erupted as the ground between them was torn asunder. A wave of shock followed and left all nearby windows in pieces. A grinding noise soon followed as the two attacks struggled to give way to one another. Damien smirked as he felt his hockey waver, but enough to stop the descending mace. Whiz. Damien's body disappeared and reappeared at eye level with Kaido and shot 4 fingers into his opponent's chest. The fingers that were wrapped in air and hockey dug into the beast like pirate skin and left a bloody graze. Kaido took a step back and saw his bruised chest. The Navy's little tricks, they tickle. He once again raised his club, but this time he jumped into the air with a loud bang, reaching nearly 20 meters in the sky. Grr. The air groaned as Kaido shifted his weight, holding his weapon up with both hands. Asterisk FWWM. Damien readied both arms as they were wrapped in a dull coat of hockey, armoring his defense. Bam. A resounding explosion went off as Damien gritted his teeth, holding up the coming mace. His fingers creaked at the metallic texture, trying to drill themselves in. A huge weight fell onto the red-eyed pirate as he held up the weight of both Kaido's attack and weight, both pushing forth, wrestling for victory. Rumble. The ground under Damien was cracked like a mirror as the shockwave continued to erupt. Kaido gave up the assault and landed a handful of meters away. He gave no chance for recovery and swung his club forth once more, a roar of refusal following it. Damien once again returned a powerful left fist as he clashed head-on with the absurdly large mace. What power, he thought with some struggle as his feet tore into the ground to maintain his balance. But my armament hockey is growing fast. Damien then released his attack in retreat, causing Kaido to stagger a few steps forward due to inertia. Whiz. Utilizing Soru allowed Damien to once again appear in the air in front of the momentarily immobilized pirate, a fist ready. Bam. Damien slammed his fist into the very sternum of the future emperor, driving all his physical power in without mercy. Ah, Kaido gave out a groan as he felt his ribs tremble. He was then shot forth at great speeds from the hit and crashed into the buildings a few hundred meters away. Kaido went through 3 walls as the debris rained down everywhere. Damien narrowed his eyes at the crash and saw a predictable result. Kaido stood up in no time, throwing off huge piles of concrete and earth with ease, eliciting a deep rumble. His chest was purple with some bruising but nothing worth mentioning. Waroro, again, he roared out with a wide grin. He picked up his fallen mace and rushed forward with a thunderous charge. Crackle. Purple lightning flashed around the weapon as if it was awakened from slumber. The smell of a beast emanated from the young pirate. His hockey is combusting the air into lightning, Damien thought as he saw the flashing spectacle. Reime Hake. Kaido drove his thunderous mace without mercy as the air was ripped apart. The sheer pressure sent out tornadoes of wind as the giant weapon neared Damien. Damien smiled in response as he ran headfirst into the attack. Asterisk Kurip. His black fist was soon covered with a bubbling crimson mist. Another stream of energy was helically wrapped around his arm while the main one gathered at his fist. Asterisk Fu. Suddenly the energy around his arm shot forth like a spring, driving the one gathered in his hand like a rocket. Flames sparked from the increased friction from the crushing ability as it blazed its way to the coming mace. Fury Road. Boom. The erupting fist clashed with the black mace dancing with electricity as a booming shockwave pulsed out. The air screeched in return as the overpowering strength of Kaido collided with Damien's crushing powers. The ground shattered apart in a spectacle of red and purple as the two sides refused to back down. The two young pirates roared out in unison, loud enough to overshadow the torrents of air whirling out from their collision. Boom. Another explosion rattled the island as the two were soon sent flying in opposite directions and crashing into the walls at the expense of Severe Island. Dust rained down and debris befell the land, more resembling a battlefield than a peaceful island. Cough cough. Damien slowly stood up from the pile of debris as some blood dribbled from his mouth. He glanced at his broken arm which had turned purple. Kaido, on the other side, got up as well. His right arm was bruised and his wrist seemed to have cracked from the clash. However, both young pirates had something in common, a grin plastered to their faces. Damien's broken arm creaked as it was soon put back together and the recovery began. Kaido's physical condition was surely better but his beloved club was cracked. The two were about to rush at each other once more but... Ahem, a voice broke out. That's enough for now, the marines from nearby branches will be here soon and I can't gamble the wood on your little game, Shaki said as she walked in between the two. Kaido grumbled, to hell with those marines. Shaki was not amused. You can play later, right now we have a mission to complete and you'll have to hunt and cook your own food, Kaido-chan. The horned youth scoffed in return as he lowered his fighting desire in silent surrender. Shaki then turned towards Damien and said, your strength went beyond my expectations, Tilda. She then winked in question, well, what do you say, do you want to come under the Rocks Pirates as an apprentice? To be continued. Author's Corner. Images, https://discord.gg/ajishboob6q. Chapter 13, The Devil. Published by Ranobes. One Piece, Path to Power. 2,650 words. Well, what do you say? Do you want to come under the Rocks Pirates as an apprentice? Damien narrowed his eyes at the smoking woman. Shikigyaku and Kaido. Both had deep connections to the huddle of power in the New World, though currently, they both were simply weapons of Rocks D. Zebek. Such an invitation could be considered signing one's own death certificate, but to Damien, it was a calling. Rocks is due to fall in a few years, the young pirate thought to himself. The flourish way to survive in this hellish era would be in the den of danger. Damien could feel that his small clash with Kaido had already shaped his haki quite a bit, reflected in the notification that had come. Armament haki mastery has reached the intermediate stage. Such a boost in strength begged the question, just what height could he reach by being around such monsters? A smile appeared on the young pirate's face as he resolutely answered, all right, I'll join. Hee, I look forward to your growth, Damien-chan. Shaki returned a smile. She then walked to the docks, carrying little of the mess they left behind. Let's go then, we need to leave before some nuisances arrive. Kaido roared out a laugh, Wororo, we'll finish our fight later. Pull up Kaido's stats, Damien ordered. After a duel, it was enough to quantify the future emperor's current power. Kaido. Age, 17 years old. Height, 19 feet, 5.79 meters. Status, healthy. Devil fruit, none. Haki, observation haki, intermediate mastery, armament haki, intermediate mastery, conqueror's haki, initial mastery. Strength, middle tier Yonko commander. He was around Damien's strength level, but he had a feeling that in a drawn-out combat, it would come down to his devil fruit to decide the outcome. Just their little scuffle now had left some much-desired outcomes to occur. Marineford. Fleet Admiral's office. What did you say? A heavy voice boomed within the walls of the office. A large man with thick muscles and scars sat in the seat of power, endless strength brimming from stature. He had a short sleeve shirt and a gray-colored marine coat draped over his shoulders. The marine had hair and beard arranged in an array of spikes, and some fuzz on both sides of his face. He also sported a stitched scar under his left eye. Image of Kong, in Discord. F. Fleet Admiral Kong. The news was confirmed in the sightings of Shikigyaku and Kaido of Rocks Pirates alongside Inadi Damien at Severe Island. The rear admiral broke the news. The muscular marine simply squinted his tired eyes as he massaged his forehead. He closed his eyes as a brief figure of a bloodied, grinning man flashed in his mind. Those damn D's, just one problem after another. Looks like Rocks found another new apprentice who will cause me more headaches, Kong muttered. The fleet admiral shook his head and ordered, update their bounties, even for that woman supervising them. I want them taken down before they can enter the new world. Kong clenched his fists. We still have time to crush these budding threats. West Blue, near Reverse Mountain. So that's it, the gargantuan continent, the red line, Damien exclaimed as he saw the colossal crimson wall run across the entire ocean. No matter how far out you looked, the red line just kept on stretching beyond it, cutting beyond the line of clouds, seemingly touching heaven. Image, in Discord. Damien-chan, I'll need you and Kaido-chan to hold up the ship. It will be a rickety ride, Shaki said while preparing the ship to climb the mountain. The two pirates grabbed the sides of the ship as it slowly began to rise up the mountain, creaking uncontrollably. Great amounts of water splashed onto the ship and the two, threatening to push them back down. Creak swish. Moments passed as the ship was fixed in speed as the ascent continued, leaving the West Blue behind. Damien eyed the blue sea as they soon disappeared into the clouds. It took a few minutes for the ship to climb to the top of the Reverse Mountain. A short sigh escaped Damien's mouth as he glanced at the sea of clouds. Find us. A whisper suddenly echoed in Damien's ears, drawing his eyes into the white sea. The words had come as soon as the ship reached the apex of the mountain, an area where the ascent from all four seas met. What was that? Damien thought while examining his surroundings. It came from beyond the red line. Paradise Sea, the first part of the New World, lay in the direction the ship was headed while the end of the New World was behind them. The world is round, so naturally the start of the Grand Line and the end of the Grand Line meet at Reverse Mountain. Damien was left pondering as the ship began to descend the mountain at great speeds, howling winds following suit. Vivush. He felt the cold and powerful streams of air as the roller coaster ride came to an end. Splash. The broken down ship finally landed into the Grand Line. Damien walked across the main deck of the rickety ship as he took in the changed atmosphere. The air felt chaotic, much wilder and more out of control than the West Blue. How do you like the air of the Grand Line, Damien-chan? A soft voice brought him back. Damien returned a thin smile as he breathed in the air of paradise. Kaido also walked over, impatience etched on his face. Oye, woman, how long till we go back to Hachinosu? Shaki shook her head at the young beast. This is your first main mission, Kaido-chan. We can't return without the new ship, so be ready for a lengthy wait. The man beast simply growled and then sat his giant body down, falling into a nap immediately. Shaki ignored the snoring Kaido and began speaking to Damien. We'll go to the nearby island for resupply. I also need to contact the captain about you, she said as she took out an eternal pose from her pocket. The pose had Uruguana written on it, indicating the island it led to. Damien nodded at her words. The journey there would take at least a day and it left some time to waste. Damien proceeded to ask her a question. Shaki-san, why do you come under rocks? The woman glanced at the young man and gave a small sigh. I'll tell you if you call me Shaki-ne from now on, she said with a teasing smile. Damien scratched his head at the odd request and shrugged in agreement. Puff. She then exhaled a cloud of smoke. I come from the Kong Belt, you know where I mean, right? Damien nodded as he gestured to the snake symbol on her belt, Empress of Amazon Lily, the captain of the Kuja pirates. Shaki gave a small nod and continued, right, well, you see our island is protected by the lack of wind in the Kong Belt, it keeps the pirates away. She then hummed a little tune while taking in another puff of her cigar. But there are fruits out there that can give ways to overcome the Kong Belt, Shaki explained. As the Empress, I couldn't just wait for the day to come when we no longer could protect ourselves. She continued, one day I had to come to Sabodi to resupply but got caught up with that Garp, it was Rocks who saved me. But that man would never do anything without expecting something in return. A sigh escaped her lips, a dear love-struck friend of mine wanted to take my place but I ended up turning her down. Since then, we made a deal while I worked under him, acting as his eyes and ears. She then glanced at the young man before him, a hint of helplessness in her eyes. The captain's name keeps both the Navy and other pirates away, but there's always a price for selling your soul to the devil. Damien took in the information and couldn't help but visualize the devil she spoke of. She then walked up, reached up and patted Damien's shoulder. When we get to the new world, trust no one. Shaki left to go inside the main cabin, leaving a snoring Kaido and a pondering Damien behind. A day later. Uruguana Island, Paradise. Munch. Burp. Two young men sat at a giant table as an absurd amount of food was slowly inhaled away. Though the youth differed greatly in height, they both had a mind-numbing appetite. It was like a bottomless pit. The food kept on disappearing as the two munched on. Hey, those two have a big reward on their heads, a man whispered from the side as he watched the display. Another man quickly nodded as he read over some papers. They were newly released bounties that had made their way to the world. Wanted. Less than I.operator D.operator Damien greater than. Less than Sin Incarnate greater than. Less than B 150 million greater than. Less than Dead or Alive greater than. Wanted. Less than Kaido greater than. Less than 100 Beast greater than. Less than B 220 million greater than. Less than Dead or Alive greater than. Damien was slightly annoyed by the vast difference in the numbers. The only reason the gap existed was due to Damien's disappearance from the world news while Kaido had been rampaging his way through the seas over the past 2 years. What the hell is up with that epithet? What sin did I commit? He said with a confused look. Kaido, who was gobbling a huge piece of meat, grinned. Wororo. Our captain is called the Abyssal Lesson. Looks like the Navy sees you as his little toy. The revelation left Damien befuddled. Though seeing Kaido's condescending look made him shoot back. I guess they see me as a graver threat than you. Just wait till I leave you in the dust. Crunch. A huge chunk of the table was ripped off by the hulking pirate as he heard Damien's reply. The people nearby chose against picking a fight as they just watched the two young monsters arguing amongst one another, while simultaneously devouring enough food to fuel a small village. Burp. Kaido let out a ground-shaking burp as he gurgled down a huge barrel of alcohol. Damien just shook his head at the scolding to come, and it came fast. A slender woman appeared from the side with a stern face. You shouldn't be drinking at your age, Kaido-chan. It'll mess with your growth. Even though her size was dwarfed by the hulking young pirate, she carried a certain air of hidden power. Kaido harumphed at the scolding. Something that tastes good can't be bad for you. Stop pestering me, woman. Shaki squinted her eyes in return. Don't test my patience, young man. The giant teenager just growled as he threw the sake to the side, exploding into an aromatic spectacle. Damien couldn't help but laugh out loud as he saw the future emperor being reprimanded like a child. Even the spectators were baffled but chose not to display their amusement and stifled their laugh from the fear of the 6-foot-tall woman. A man gulped as he waved another bounty poster around, ensuring no one nearby was dumb enough to make problems. Wanted. Less than Shikiyaku greater than. Less than Black Death greater than. Less than B670 million greater than. Less than dead or alive greater than. A few hours later, Shaki had finished some shopping and resupplying, alongside repairing the ship enough to sail for another few months. Kaido was napping away as Damien made his way to the small room inside the cabin. It was the same room Shaki was in. The female pirate had called him for something of grave importance. He took a deep breath, knowing what was waiting for him once he entered. Creak. The wooden door opened as the red-eyed youth walked in. He saw the small room that was lightly lit, a normal bed and furniture in place. Damien glanced at the short-haired woman sitting by the table, a transponder snail set in front of her. The snail emulated the face of the person on the other side of the call. Wild hair set in spiky dreads, feral expression plastered to the scarred face, a wide grin etched on. Shaki nodded at Damien in silence and turned her attention back to the snail. He's here now, Captain. She then gestured for Damien to take the snail's receiver and moved out of the way. Damien saw the snail break out in a wider grin as it broke out a deep and hoarse voice. Inadi. It said, a familiar name. Damien took a deep breath and replied in an unshaken voice, Rox D. Zebek. The snail's scarred and savage appearance warped into deep intrigue. Zahahaha, he laughed in a low tone. You're the interesting kid that left West Blue in shambles a few years ago. The voice continued, Shikiyaku told me that you want to come under my flag as an apprentice. Good, very good. I always welcome you ambitious brats. His voice then grew frighteningly low. Just remember this, kid, you can betray me whenever you want but just be prepared for the hell that will follow. A solemn expression appeared on the young pirate's face as he heard the menacing voice. Damien wasn't surprised at the man's words. If anything, he admired Zebek's power to make so many powerful forces subservient to him. He vied for that power too. The snail then addressed the woman standing by the side. Shikiyaku, you've brought some heat on yourself by picking up that kid. You head to Sabaody while the new kid will go to Yozora Island to get the ore. Rox went on to say, I'll send someone to bring you to the new world from there in a month. The snail didn't wait for a reply and simply hung up with a, Kacha tilde. Shaki put away the snail and then glanced at Damien. You heard the boss. I'll give you the eternal pose to Yozora Island in a ship. Your mission is to retrieve the eternal ore that is kept there. She then warned Damien, that place is also called the Island of Darkness. According to the captain he read a poneglyph that said the people at Yozora Island await for someone to come and retrieve that very ore. Damien noted down the fact that Zebek was able to decipher poneglyphs somehow and then proceeded to ask, what exactly is the ore for? The woman shrugged. Captain said it can absorb and spread out forces it's subjected to in some magical way. Let's just say that Adam's Oak is not enough for a ship to carry the monsters under the Rock's flag. The two then walk out to the main deck of the ship. Take these and buy a small ship. You have a month to rendezvous with us at Sabaody. I'll wait for you there. Damien grabbed the items the woman gave him. Some money to buy a ship, an eternal pose to Yozora Island, a Vivre card with Shaki's name on it, and some food. She then pulled out a small red pouch and raised her pistol. Bang, bang. The bullets hit the outside of the pouch and seemed to enchant it with some purple void-like energy. This pouch will store the ore, better than you carrying it back overseas, no? Damien nodded. Though he could make do without the pouch with his inventory, he naturally didn't want to expose it. He graciously took all the items and walked to the edge of the ship. See you in a month then, Shaki Nay. He hopped off using moonwalk and made his way to the shipyard of Uraguana. Shaki gave out a small laugh. What an odd kid tilde. To be continued. Author's Corner. So Shaki took a certain other woman's place on the Rocks Pirates. I hope you like my interpretation of Zebek from what little that was given. In the original version of this FIC, I gave him the epithet of the Great Sin. Now changed to the Abyssal Sin. Quite ironic that the chapter detailing the devil of the story is the 13th installment of the fanfic. Images. https://discord.gg/edishboob6q. Chapter 14. The Guardians of the Ore. Published by Ranobes. One Piece. Path to Power. 2,610 words. A few days later. Calling it the Island of Darkness wasn't an understatement, Damien muttered. He was currently on a small ship, not far from the gloomy landmass before him. Yozora Island was covered with a thick, black cloud that was simply immobile. It didn't move, float or even shift in position like a blanket covering the land under it. No light passed through, just a perpetual darkness. Island image, in Discord. Creek. The ship docked on and the anchor splashed into the sea. According to historical archives, this island had no random weather changes, it was just forever dark with occasional rain. Pitter-patter. It was one of those rainy days as the water befell the land. Damien landed on the dark soil, his boots digging into the moist soil. The island was relatively small, covered with coniferous trees. Silent chirps echoed through the valley as a swampy smell covered the land. A symphony of voices arrived in his ears, originating from the grass, trees and other foliage. The life that existed on land was used to darkness. The grass was a special kind that had evolved to live off the sunlight reflected by the moon. Many mushrooms and nightly plants exist, some even evolving to develop their own luminescence. Show me the way. The natural life seemed to hear Damien's thoughts and began to weave and mold a path for him to travel. Some glow bugs and fireflies appeared and lit the way over, granting Damien a full view of the path. A castle, Damien murmured as he saw the structure at the center of the land. It was built over a large cliff, an olden-style manor that dominated its relative landscape. An eerie sight to say the least. Manor image, in Discord. Quote exclamation mark quote. Damien felt a distant gaze, but he was unable to pinpoint it, leaving him no choice but to venture on ahead. He walked through the self-clearing grounds, the trees and grass granting him the fastest path to the castle. Eventually, he came through a large open clearing, surrounded by cone-like trees, seemingly unnatural. Watch out. The voice of the trees echoed in Damien's ears as he heard a sharp whistle of the air. Shing. Damien's eyes widened as he felt the touch of a cold blade at the back of his neck. It didn't cut into his skin, just rested on his neck, a warning not to move. I didn't come here for a fight, Damien calmly stated. Though he remained unmoved, Damien's boots were swirling with crimson mist, ready to return an attack if needed. A silent moment passed as he then heard a sharp yet stern voice. Why have you come here? It was a man's voice, middle-aged, confident. I was sent here to pick up an ore, the poneglyph said it to be here. Damien waited and felt a very faint tremor in the sword that was grazing his skin, now sure that the poneglyph meant quite a lot to the man. Another moment passed as the blade was removed from Damien's neck. The young pirate slowly turned his head and saw the man behind him. He was around 7 feet tall. He looked to be in his early 40s. The upper half of his face was covered with a hood, probably to keep away from the rain. He seemed to have short dark hair and a stubble beard. The man wore a dark coat that covered his entire body, but the missing right arm was obvious. A sharp katana-style sword was in the man's left hand, but he was still quite defensive. "You've read the stone," the man lightly said. Damien just gave a small nod as he replied, "I came for the eternal war." The man's eyes seemed to examine the young man before him, even though they were hidden under the hood. Damien felt the sharp gaze. "Follow me to the castle." The man took off in the direction of the dark mansion, and Damien followed suit. Even with a missing limb, it feels like he can cut me up, quite the guardians. It took a quiet 10-minute walk to reach the castle. It was Gothic themed with creaky and dark-colored wood. Water dripped down the rotting wood, sending ripples through the puddles littered over the region. The two walked in via the main doors that creaked in response. The halls were lit with green candles, and a warm and cozy ambience filled the rooms. "It's more welcoming than I thought," Damien said. The man looked at him and nodded. "I hope you forgive me for my haste earlier. There have been many invaders in the past few years." Damien shrugged, showing he didn't mind. The man seemed more comfortable as he elaborated. "It happened 20 months ago. A few thousands raided our land looking for treasure. They used my nieces and nephews to kill their parents and then them. It took everything to repel them, an arm from me. Only my wife and son remain with me as their protector." The two walked down the red carpeted floor and into the main lounge area. "Our ancestors have been waiting for someone to collect the ore for centuries now," the man said, as they made their way to the sofa at the edge of the room. The red couch was laid in front of a giant window that spanned from wall to wall, boasting a wide view of the hedge maze beyond it. A beautiful woman sat on the couch, combing a very young child's hair. The black-haired woman carefully sat the child to the side and stood up, wringing her hands together in obvious excitement. "Aratilda, a visitor, how rare." Damien blinked at the rather contrast between husband and wife, but something else caught his gaze, the woman's eyes. The pupils were yellow, with 2 black rings circling them, sharp, piercing eyes to say the least. Damien took a deep breath as he made the connection but took it slow. "My name is Inadi Damien, pardon the intrusion," he said, somewhat impressed by his own etiquette. The woman beamed a smile and replied cordially, "What a well-mannered young man. My name is Mina, and you've met my husband, Vlad." The man by the side gave a quick ahem, and took off his hood, the same eyes and hair color apparent. "Why don't you have a seat while I get some tea, dear? Why don't you change into something warm?" Mina said, getting up from her seat. This left Damien on the sofa with their child. "They just leave a stranger with their kid?" the pirate muttered to himself. An awkward silence broke out as Damien's eyebrow twitched under the sharp gaze of the toddler sitting away from him. Damien met his sharp, examining eyes. The child was less than a meter in height, around 38 inches. Same short black hair and piercing yellow eyes. "Well, what's your name?" Damien asked, though he could guess the reply. The boy tilted his head and blinked a few times. "Mahak," he said. "Dracula Mahak." The confirmation made Damien take a deep breath, nodding to himself. It also made the pirate take a closer look at the boy, seeing loneliness, curiosity, nervousness, and even excitement in those hawk-like eyes. "You're awfully mature for your age, Mahak. Tell me, what do you want to be when you grow up?" The boy wasted no time and answered subconsciously, "The greatest swordsman in the sea." Mahak then turned his gaze to the hedge maze right outside. A sharp bright light reflected from the center of the maze as if a metallic object was there, and there indeed was. It was a large, silver sword planted within a thick black rock. It had a very odd-shaped golden crossguard with a complex pattern printed upon it, yet the blade carried an unparalleled beauty. Mahak's longing eyes stared at the blade that seemed to cut the low winds every so often. At that moment, Mina came back into the room and gave Damien a cup of tea. "Mahak has never seen outsiders since his birth. He may be a little awkward around you," Mina apologized, playing with her son's hair. Damien shook his head while gesturing at the sword outside. "Such a sharp weapon left outside in a rock. I take it has great meaning to your family." Mina nodded while also admiring the beauty of the treasured weapon. "The blade is one of the 12 supreme blades, Yuru. It has been in that stone for centuries now," she calmly said. "You don't feel averse to telling a stranger of such a treasure?" Damien asked with some suspicion. Mina just beamed her usual smile. "We believe the sword awaits a suitable user. If you can free it from its confines, then it's yours to keep." "And yet centuries have passed and the blade still waits." Vlad's voice resounded as he stepped back into the room. Damien then glanced at the young boy who was but a toddler. He crouched down at the child's eye level and asked, "You've set your sights on that sword, haven't you, kid?" Mahak gave a quick nod as he clenched his tiny hands. "I'll free the sword one day." The exclamation caught the two parents off guard, but Damien just smirked in return. "I look forward to that day then." Mina chimed with an invitation. "Damien-kun, why don't you join us for dinner? My husband will need a while to bring out all the treasured ore from the keep." An hour later, Damien had finished a meal with the small yet tight-knit family. It was a hearty meal of a sea king caught by Vlad. Damien even asked some more questions about the family's origin. Supposedly they were tasked to guard the ore by someone centuries ago. The island was dark for as long as time went back. Their ancestors eventually got used to the darkness and gloomy nature of the land. Their eyes evolved under these conditions and over many generations to see much further and finer than others. Swordsmanship was their creed and remained so. Yuru awaited its user while the eternal ore awaited its retriever. According to Vlad, both Yuru and the eternal ore could be said to be equal in their worth. The family even welcomed Damien to stay for a while. "Vlad-san," Damien addressed the man sitting before him. They were in a lounge area with deep red sofas. A chandelier holding up 6 green candles hung above them. "This is abrupt, but I hope to stay here for a few weeks to train before taking the eternal ore, and for you to help me in my training," the pirate straightforwardly asked. "You were able to stay out of my perception before. I want to sharpen those instincts before diving into the new world." He had noticed it before against Chaki, and then with Vlad, both of them were able to mask their presence from Damien and approach from his blind spots. The older gentleman narrowed his eyes at the bold pirate, seemingly to inspect his worth. Vlad nodded but said with a hint of hesitation, "We haven't had friendly guests over here in a long, long time. I don't mind you staying to train, but you must know that training your senses is best done in deathly scenarios. 3 weeks is not enough time unless." Yet the man's tone sharpened as he said, "Unless I put you through hell to sharpen those instincts." Such words brought a smile to Damien's face. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The two walked outside to an open garden behind the mansion. Mina appeared, holding Mahak's hand as they watched from afar. Vlad and Damien stood 20 meters in between. Shing. Vlad unsheathed his blade as it sliced the air. "This is Yuzora, of the 21 great swords," he introduced the dark blade. "It has accompanied me for years. Let me use it to test your mettle." *FWWM. The sword was soon wrapped in thick hockey as it glistened a jet black color. The one-armed swordsman shot from his position and appeared only inches from Damien's throat. Clang. A loud clanking sound boomed the area as Damien's metallic fist collided with the blade. A shockwave grumbled the land as Vlad weaved through the air. Whiz. His body flashed and flickered through the air and reappeared meters away from Damien, raining down countless shots. Damien's senses went into overdrive mode as he struggled against the onslaught, slowly and barely warding each hit. Clang. Boom. Bam. Explosions popped incessantly as Damien was forced into an entirely defensive posture. A slight irritation building as his eyes followed the flickering target. "Is this all your ambition is worth, young man?" Vlad's calm voice echoed in Damien's ears. The young pirate could only grit his teeth and force himself to move faster and faster. Swish. Spurt. Cuts and scrapes decorated his body as blood dribbled out from the razor-sharp Yuzora. A one-armed swordsman with speed beyond any foe Damien had yet seen. Don't expect me to give in this easily. Damien's firm voice boomed as his eyes grew sharp. A quick burst of energy spanned out in all directions of Damien's body and cracked the ground in return. It was a loud screech as Vlad paused for a moment. Damien exploited the momentary pause as his blackened fist drove into the man's core. Bam! The overpowering strength from Damien's very flesh rattled the blackened blade that got in the way. Vlad's single arm trembled as his body was shot back with great speed. Whiz! The wind whistled as the man readjusted his balance and landed on his feet tens of meters away. Good strength, Vlad muttered, returning his gaze to the coming enemy. Damien shot forward as his hockey-clad fist slammed onto the blades, finally going on the offense. Boom, bang, bam. The clash went on for dozens of minutes as it began to balance out. Vlad's sharp and calm sword style left Damien not a moment to rest while he did his absolute best to return equal attacks. His attacks grew fiercer and left fewer openings, but it was nowhere enough to win the battle. You have an excellent talent for combat, Vlad said with an admiring tone as he sheathed his weapon. Damien panting lightly and gazed down at his cut-up appearance. The wounds were superficial considering his vitality, but the blood was enough to turn his attire from black to red. Still far from leaving a scratch on you, though, Damien said with a soft sigh. Mina climbed down and saw Damien's bloodied clothes but was casually waved off. I'm fine, they're just a few scratches. Mahawk too made his way down and stared at Damien. The dripping blood contrasted heavily with the firm eyes of its host. You asked me about my goal, the child said. What's yours? Damien glanced at the curious young boy and gave a simple answer. There was a time when my fate was at the mercy of others. Since then I made it my goal to never let that happen again. No one will ever hurt what I care for the most. Mahawk blinked into a lost state but soon flinched in discomfort as Damien poked the kid's forehead with his index finger. You're just a kid, stop thinking so much, you make me feel stupid with such a mature perspective. Let's go back inside, I'll tell you about the world outside. The two returned to the gloomy castle as the 3-week training session officially kicked off. To be continued. Author's Corner. Images, https://discord.gg/edishboob6q. Chapter 15, Red Metal, Black Shadows. Published by Ranobes. One Piece, Path to Power. 2,545 words. 3 weeks later. Clang. Boom. Short yet powerful explosions went off as flickering slashes rained upon the red-eyed youth. He was currently standing in the center of a large clearing under the dark clouds of Yuzor Island. Damien had his eyes closed as he instinctively dodged and blocked the onslaught of attacks. He had begun to anticipate attacks from more than just their intent. This included the slight changes in air current or the vibrations of the earth below him, the variations of heat and so on. He allowed his observation to flow from the entirety of his body as the combat instincts had been drilled into each pore. Damien had quickly grown under the deathly scenarios imposed on him by the one-armed swordsman, leaving his hockey far sharper than ever before. The main thing was that he had conditioned his body against the attacks and intents of intelligent persons, something he couldn't do back at Renaissance Island. A grueling schedule of pain and suffering, having bled many times only for it to heal away in seconds. A black-clothed man soon appeared in front of Damien, shaking his head with a sigh. I take it back, your combat talent is simply beyond my understanding. Damien let out a small chuckle as he took off his blindfold. If you had both arms then I'm sure I would have been in much more trouble. The one stern man seemingly incapable of joy was now beaming a thin smile. I'm sure you'll grow beyond my level in a matter of years. The man then sheathed his weapon with a click as the two walked back to the castle, all under the veil of the endless night. A near-meter-tall toddler came running from the cliff as he trailed behind the two. Father, when can I start training too? The child's voice, which was usually devoid of much emotion, was showing great desire and even a bit of desperation. Vlad shook his head, maybe in a few more years. The hawk-eyed child clicked his tongue and ran off into the dark forest. Vlad sighed with a defeated smile. That child has spoken more in the past few weeks than since he was born. It feels odd to see him act like his age. They eventually reached the castle gates where Mina was waiting with some cool drinks. Did he run off again? She rhetorically asked with a sigh. Damien smirked from the side. You can't blame a kid for being impatient. Mina glared at the teenager. You are a kid in my eyes too, fighting so much at a young age. Kids are in such a hurry nowadays. The woman then looked at her husband and said, Dear, take Damien-kun to the treasure door. I'll go get Hawk-chan. Vlad and Damien soon made their way into the heart of the castle. It was a worn-down room with the same green candles that never ran out. Cobwebs decorated the corner of the room as the center was awfully clean. There were columns and rows of rather distinct metal. Every single one of them was blood-red in color, glistening with mystery. Vlad walked up and picked up a chunk of the metal. It does not rust or break up from the passage of time, hence, eternal ore. He then squeezed the metal with his only arm. Crack. The piece of metal shattered like glass and clattered onto the ground. Damien blinked in confusion. Vlad smiled a little and then slashed a hockey-clad dagger that was hidden in his jacket on a huge chunk of the metal. Clang. The blade creaked as a piece of reflective metal fell to the ground. Yet it wasn't from the ore but from the blade. Vlad showed Damien the shattered weapon and said, The ore is weak in small amounts, but nigh unbreakable at high quantities. He continued to explain, it has the ability to perfectly store and slowly and uniformly release the forces imposed upon itself. This way the larger its body the more absurd force it can intake. Even if hit with a mountainous weight on one side, it will equally divide it all over the area of the ore, effectively cancelling the stress. Vlad finished. Damien slowly nodded with appreciation. Where does such metal even come from? Vlad threw his blade onto the ground and gazed back at the hill of red metal. It was oxidized by the blood of an ancient creature centuries ago. It gave it this special characteristic, that's all we know. Damien picked up a tiny piece of the ore. Sybil, any thoughts? I thought you forgot about me, Damien, let me check. Yes, the bath of blood seems to hold as I detect high levels of hemoglobin and iron in the ore. Most likely the blood was that of a fruit user of sorts in which the user could control the forces applied. She continued, in other words, any force, even that of devil fruits, applied over a small space will be evenly distributed all over a larger body and in all directions in a controlled time. The fruit user would need to have awakened their power to lead to such a change. Asterisk who. Damien took a deep breath to let the information sink in. Another normal day with abnormal revelations, perks of being in an anime world. How much exactly can I take from this? He asked. Vlad shrugged. Our mission was to protect it till its rightful owner arrived. From what I know, it's all yours. Damien took out his tiny red pouch. Well, don't mind if I do. He then pointed the enchanted pouch at the hill of metal. Asterisk foo. A huge vacuum soon awakened from the bag as the metal was slowly but surely sucked into the palm-sized bag. Vlad blinked. His surprised face was a little comical as his facial features had difficulty showing such emotions. You have some interesting tools. Damien smiled in return. Naturally, he didn't intend to give all the ore to Shaki for the ship, keeping a decent amount as commission. He then eyed the older gentleman in front of him. Thank you for your hospitality, Vlad-san. I'll pay back the debt with whatever you need. Damien gave him a transponder snail that had his appearance on hit. A mass of black-red hair, a tiny diagonal scar above one eye, and equipped with a stylish attire. You can contact me through this. Vlad accepted the snail but then casually said, I enjoy the company of a fresh face after all these years. I will surely call you if I need your aid. The two nodded at the thought and went outside. Mina now stood in the greenly lit lounge with a slightly annoyed Mahawk by the doors. She glanced at the red-eyed youth with a smile. Damien-kun, it seems you got what you came for. Yes, thank you for your hospitality, Damien thanked as he made his intent to leave clear. Mina slightly smiled. You've helped Hawk-chan become so much more energetic. As a mother I can't thank you enough. Damien then looked at the hawk-eyed child and gave him a small smirk. He then began to walk out of the castle and yet came to a stop. A tiny hand grabbed his cloak from behind and tugged at it. Damien turned back and saw the 1-year-old grasping his attire. He then crouched to his eye level and gazed into the piercing hawk-like eyes. The seas await for someone like you. Train hard and look after your parents. The boy nodded a few times. His eyes darted around and then finally asked, will you come back? It was a little odd to see the future strongest swordsman acting like that, but at the end of the day he was but a child. Damien ruffled his jet-black hair. I'm sure our paths will cross again someday. He then stood up and his towered figure left a shadow over the boy. That blade is calling out to you. It's a fitting weapon for the future strongest swordsman. The words left a small smile to appear on the child. A sharp glint passed the boy's eyes as he resolutely declared, I will hold that sword one day, so wait for me. Damien almost froze in his steps but could only respond with a chuckle, rah ha ha ha. You've got a nice fire in your eyes, make sure to never let it extinguish. He then waved to the older couple and disappeared into the nightly forest. A short whisper of Vlad echoed in his ears, stay prudent, young man. Alongside a goodbye from Mina. A while later, the ship anchored by the edge of the island soon woke up as Damien unfurled the sails. He took out the piece of paper, a Vivre card that began to point in a specific direction, inching forward. Damien soon set the ship in the direction and began to sail. Sabodi Archipelago. It was the last island before the New World. A massive mangrove forest growing out from the middle of the ocean. Since it is only made of wood, it has no magnetic pull to affect the log pose. Sabodi was made up of 79 separate trees known as Yarukaman mangrove. Each tree is called a grove and serves as an island on which people live. Sabodi layout. Grove 1 to 29, the lawless area. Grove 30 to 49, tourism and amusement area. Grove 50 to 59, shipping area. Grove 60 to 69, marine base area. Grove 70 to 79, hotel area. Images of Sabodi, in Discord. The other difference between most islands and this is the fact that you may find certain astronaut-like people walking around. The Celestial Dragons. They are the aristocratic descendants of 19 of the 20 kings who established what is now known as the world government. They can give any order and it must be followed through. Their words dictate all others around them. They are the law. They can simply point their finger out and demand you to become a slave. What would the world do in front of this absurd and dehumanizing act? They must simply look away as families are ripped apart. What will happen if you try to stand up to them? You will be killed on the spot. Heck, they might even deploy an admiral to escort these nobles. So what are the Celestial Dragons? They are the gods of this world. Asterisk fuck. Damien closed the thick book of records that detailed well-known islands of the Grand Line. Gods? I suppose with such rights and authority, it would make just about anyone a god. Though his deep red eyes flashed with determination, I wonder if these gods can bleed. 6 days later. Grove 41, Sabodi Archipelago. It was a pleasant area with a large population. The sounds of kids scrambling about alongside the occasional popping bubbles resounded everywhere. A warm sunlight bathed the grassy land, further enhancing the joyful atmosphere. Image of Grove 41, in Discord. Damn annoying fleas, a young man muttered as he made his way through the crowds of people. The person in question was a little over 10 feet in height with messy black hair and red streaks running down the left side. Damien had met some nuisances along the way to Sabodi. Terrible weather on the first day. Meet a pirate crew looking for a quick sum off his head on the third day. Damien's ship sank at that time so he had to take the pirate ship. Another random storm on the fourth day. Marine attack on the fifth, looking for the crew he killed. Left the ship broken again from cannon fire in the previous storm. It seemed the stormtrooper aim of the marine ships wasn't as prevalent as shown in the show. Or perhaps the Rocks era had a higher level of marines. Eventually, he made it to Sabodi on the 6th day, hitching a ride on the marine ship and abandoning it at Grove 41. Damien checked the clock on the tower nearby. It's only midday, there's still half a day left till the meetup time, Damien surmised. His eyes were then drawn to a rather conspicuous poster attached to the wall nearby. Public Employment Security Office monthly postings. It was almost like a flyer for goods but the name implied something more despicable. I guess the human auctions were around even before Doflamingo's sites, Damien thought as he read over the post. It was essentially written in legal terms but in layman's terms, it was a poster for a slave auction happening tonight. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. However, at that very moment, Damien's senses spiked. Whiz. A sharp whistle erupted as a dagger-like object shot at Damien's open neck. Damien didn't even move as the blade hit his skin. Clang. The sound of metal hitting metal broke out as the dagger failed to pierce Damien's hard skin. The red-eyed pirate looked around and surprisingly saw nothing. All he felt was a cold air whistle. Soon his instincts fired one more as the attacker reappeared, this time with a purple coat of energy around their body. Damien raised one finger and shot out a bullet of air. Flying finger pistol. The pocket of air traveled supersonic and into the body of his attacker and yet it then hit the wall, leaving a deep crater. Logia, Damien narrowed his eyes. You ate quite the rare devil fruit. The figure was caught off guard by the quick reflexes of her prey and chose the quick second of Damien's admiration of their power to disappear. Naturally, it didn't escape Damien's senses as he saw the assassin merge himself into the shadow of the tree 10 meters behind him, disappearing into its darkness. A few quiet minutes went by until his observation spanned and eventually felt a slight movement, but it was from an odd location, from his own shadow. Suddenly the dark-clothed figure shot up from under Damien's chin with the same daggers aiming at his carotid artery. And yet even at such a distance, the daggers somehow missed and only cleaved the air. The shadowed figure was stumped as its body trembled at the sound of a voice from behind. Bounty hunter? The figure turned around but was met with something painful. Crack. Damien's left fist adorned with hockey drove into the core of the assassin's chest as the sound of a broken bone echoed through the empty alleyway. A muffled groan followed as the figure was shot into the wall. And yet right before the crash could occur, the figure simply dissolved into the shadows of the wall. However, the clean hit left an odd feeling. Soft chest, Damien murmured as he recalled the sensation, but that would have broken the sternum and punctured a lung at the least. Though I guess bounties aren't just for show, there really are people actively on the hunt for the quick buck, he chuckled. Looks like learning armament hockey before leaving Renaissance was a good call. Damien then looked at the poster that was still in his right hand and smiled. Quite the coincidence for this auction to happen on the one day I have free, he muttered. It would be a shame to miss it. To be continued. Author's Corner. Images, https://discord.gg/edishboob6q. Chapter 16, Evolution. Published by Ranobes. One Piece, Path to Power. 3080 words. Grove 1. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and folks, welcome to this month's special recruits auction. A man's voice boomed through the large halls. The walls were nicely finished and cleaned up, with a well-lit and rather loud atmosphere. I kid you not, we have some incredible goods here today. The audience was mostly male with some higher-class women involved. The rows were neat and filled to the brim, people of vast professions, of all classes, government employees, merchants, citizens, businessmen, and nobles. Though at the very front were the true VIPs, the ones surrounded by black-suited men. They were dressed quite flauntingly. 4 astronaut-looking people. They had glass domes on their heads for their own air to breathe and wore white suits all over their bodies. Their eyes held great pride as if everything around them was all but worthless. A noble of a major country? Just another ant in their eyes. They are the Celestial Dragons, 4 of them. The auction was about to commence while the early proceedings were wrapping up. What the people involved didn't know was that a wanted man was traversing through the storage area. The long hall was dark, lit by some large lamps above the central walkway. It was dry and damp, a few droplets of water trickled from the roof and onto a puddle. The atmosphere was humid and simply void of both noise and vibrance. It was like walking through a field of dead and withered flowers. Damien's red eyes glanced through the tens of cells with hundreds of soon-to-be slaves. Many expressions clouded their faces: anger, despair, rage, and pain. I thought I had moved on from my previous life and completely committed to this one, the young man thought as he stood lost. Slavery, a heavily frowned upon notion. Age, gender, and race are all up for cash. Something like this happened in my previous life and people would rise against it, and yet it's the norm here. Damien wasn't questioning the truth of his new life, but rather himself. The One Piece world, under the adventures and vibrant lands, was full of tragedies and broken people. Damien had tapped into his past persistence to train like hell, but his mind had yet to graduate from that kindness. Tap. Dull footsteps broke out as Damien reached for the cage. He looked in and saw some eyes. One emotion shined through, the brightest of them amongst them, hope. Such silent and helpless eyes left the pirate to ponder. Damien had committed himself to reaching the peak of power, and yet he lacked an opportunity to leave it all behind. From what he could see, his past life was getting in the way of his choices and perspective of this ruthless world. It needed to be left behind, a necessary evolution. Clatter. A dull clattering resounded in the quiet prison halls as a bundle of keys fell before the one hopeful prisoner, a child. To bid farewell to my old life, I will free you all, he muttered. It can be considered my final act of kindness and pity to fully accept my new existence. The prisoner's hand shot out as the keys wildly jingled, as if fearful to waste even a second. Click. The locks clicked open as the child ran out from the chains and the collar around their neck, rushing out. The keys were passed along as the would-be slaves plagued out of the halls. Rumble. The ground shook as a handful became tens and tens became hundreds, the prisoners all running out and grasping and clawing every moment to escape from their misery. Damien just watched from the side, seeing all kinds of desperate looks from the would-be slaves. Such weakness left them prey for the predators. Bam. The doors blasted open as 8 guards came in, rifles drawn. If they couldn't recover the goods, then naturally they would need to put them down. They cocked their weapons and aimed to shoot. Yet under all the chaos were 2 crimson eyes. Slowly but surely, they began to clear up and become firmer than ever before. Damien's mind had let go of some chain that shackled him down, as the churning ambition began to blossom. From now on, I am Inadi Damien, a pirate, and nothing more. Rumble. Upon his words came a screeching wave of energy. The ground under Damien's feet cracked as the waves rippled out. The guards suddenly felt the weight of the world pressing down on their shoulders and very minds. Their eyes rolled back into their skull as their knees weakened. Thud. One by one, they all fell, dropping like flies, swept away. Damien felt the release of some inborn power, his hands subconsciously reaching out to bathe in the feeling. The emptiness and relief left a need to breathe, a need to revel in his evolution. This is conqueror's hockey, the young pirate muttered to himself. Damien was about to leave but soon felt something afoot. A shadow of a child remained in a cell. Dead in sleep? He then heard the heartbeat, and something else. Yawn. It was an awfully comfortable yawn, one you'd make after waking up from a nap in school. Is it morning already? A dull, young voice broke out. Jingle. The boy soon got up from the ground and slowly walked to the front in curiosity about the changed environment. Rah, things look a lot different from how they were a few hours ago. He had a sleeping mask pulled over his forehead, and the scruffy afro-like hair seemed dirty. Droopy eyes still waking up. Damien felt something familiar about the boy's demeanor but he couldn't put his finger on it. The keys are right there, you can walk out of here if you're stealthy enough, Damien casually said. The child looked at the ground and saw the bundle of keys. It looks like a lot of work to go through them. Can't you just pop off my shackles? You look quite strong, Mr. Pirate. Damien smiled with intrigue and walked to the cage. Creak. The metal bars groaned as they were bent without difficulty and ripped open. Boom. The door was thrown into the wall and they crashed into a cloud of dust. What's your name, kid? Damien asked. Tap. All the while his left hand grabbed the cold collar around the boy's neck. Ring. A subtle ringing broke out as the device seemed to activate. The ringing was getting faster every second. The child woke up fully as some tension overtook the lazy eyes. On second thoughts, I'll take my chances with a K. Damien hummed at his words before he could finish as a mass of crimson energy bubbled in his palm. The energy wrapped around in a string and was quickly inserted into the device. Grr. The inner gears growled as their core was crushed and destroyed. Zip. The air whistled as the collar crumpled from its solid form and off the child's neck. Damien casually tossed the metal scrap behind himself as it went off in a resounding explosion. One echoed in the now empty halls as the dust and debris rained down. The kid fell to the ground with a thud, his forehead swamped with cold sweat. Damien smiled at the physical response. No need to thank me. The boy raised his face with annoyance. Thank you. I almost became the youngest documented case of a heart attack victim because of you. Damien showed an innocent face and gave a small shrug in return. Hey, you're the one who said I look strong enough to free you. He then walked out from the dull cell and readied himself to leave. The kid ran out with some excitement. Wait, how'd you rip metal like that? That was kinda cool. Damien was walking out of the hall at this point as the young stray peppered him with questions. Are you really a pirate? Do you have a pirate crew? Why'd you save us? Are you an ability user? Can I do that too? Damien massaged his temples and gave out a sigh. Maybe I should have left you in there. The pirate soon stepped through the doors back into the auction hall and saw an unexpected sight. Even the kid trailing behind him paused in his steps. Gulp. The young boy gave an audible gulp as his eyes frantically blinked. Hey, Mr. Pirate, this is a big deal. And it was. Some of the freed prisoners had found themselves here. No, rather they especially wanted to come here. The halls were empty and certain individuals were targeted by the prisoners. Ones with enough prestige to even cause Damien to pause. Damn celestial dragons, you took my daughter and chained me up when I came for answers. This is what you deserve. Give me back my wife. My son came back broken because of you. Pay for it with your lives. There were at least 50 of them. The men in suits were long dead. They looked as if they'd been mauled by a pack of hungry wolves. It was incredible what a group of enraged individuals could do. Having their lives ruined or their parents and children ripped away from them, leaving broken minds living off vengeance. Ah. Damn ants, you know who I am. My arm. The world nobles endured the slow and painful torture as the freed prisoners simply clawed at them with every ounce of anger. The boy shook slightly, his breathing spiked as he saw the display. Such anger can turn them into monsters, animals. Damien hummed at the display and nodded in agreement. The kid was about to ask something again but this time Damien answered before he could even speak. They've resolved themselves to die once the Marines arrive. If anything, they're treasuring every moment they get to torture these nobles. The child nodded, some grief in his eyes. Damien watched the expressions of the boy who interested him. You didn't tell me your name yet, kid. The black-eyed boy with the scruffy hair was awfully familiar. A name came to Damien's mind but he waited for the confirmation. And it too, came. My name is Kuzan, just Kuzan. Marineford. Fleet Admiral's office. Kacha Tilda. A transponder snail hung up. A different roar soon broke out. How could this happen? Kong clenched his rusty and scarred fists. Boom. The desk of the Fleet Admiral was soon reduced to dust as its owner's fist descended upon it. A rear admiral ran in and saluted. Sir, I just checked and most of our forces are deployed. Should I recall some? Kong eyed the Marine and slowly shook his head. A deep sigh escaped his mouth as he uttered. Basara is responding to the Golden Lion's rampage at G1 and Masao is deployed to keep Borealis in check considering his recent antics. Kong then reclined into his chair while dialing a number. Puru. Kacha Tilda. Kong-san, did something happen? Kong hummed with a low growl. You recently took on the mantle of admiral. I never meant this mess to be your first endeavor. The voice on the line paused for a second and came back on. I'm ready to depart right away. Kong nodded in satisfaction. Sail to Sabaody immediately. We lost contact with celestial dragons. The voice once again paused. Kong-san, we've received news on the rocks pirates also making waves there. The fleet admiral shook his head. Yes, but the priority has changed. Your mission is the nobles. The leading marine then leaned forward to the snail. Sengoku, no matter what, we can't lose face with celestial dragons at Marijoy. Do what must be done. I'll send that unruly brat to head your way too. The reply came fast as the call soon ended. Grove 1, Sabaody Archipelago. The entire surrounding zone, and even the nearby groves had been emptied. Not a soul left, only tracks of running and escape. Got it, Shakine, I'll head there right soon. Damien hung up his snail. He then gazed at the kid in front of him. Image of Kuzan, in Discord. The two stood near the edge of the grove, right next to the open sea. You got over the mauling of those dragons quite quick, Damien said as he glanced at the boy. Kuzan looked at Damien and slowly said, I did some stuff to get chained up, and saw some bad stuff too. He then looked to the sea. My father was gonna sell my sister and me. He died before it could happen, but I got caught nonetheless. Damien sat beside the boy. He died? I killed him. But he had already contacted the buyers. I was able to get my sister to a small family who lived on the same island, but not myself. She's only 2 years old and probably will forget about me in a few years, but at least she can grow up in a nice house, right? The boy soon wiped his face with his sleeve and shook himself out of the old memory. Even under those chains a part of me wanted to become a marine one day, give the oppressed a voice. And yet you were saved by a pirate, Damien chimed in. Now, you're lost. He nodded silently. A few moments passed as he then asked, what is your reason? Why become a pirate? Damien shrugged. You're the second kid to ask me that. I just want to be the master of my own fate. Even if you have to kill for it? A determined light flashed by the pirate's eyes as he said, if they get in my way, then yes, without hesitation. Damien slowly stood up as he patted the non-existent dust off his attire. How about I give you the chance to find your path? The boy's lowered head soon shot up to meet Damien's in question. Damien just smiled. I'm no saint, but I do what I want. I intend to gather some like-minded people one day under my flag. As long as you don't go against me, I'll let you figure out your moral compass. The boy blinked in thought, but he was a little too young to fully see the big picture. Perhaps it's a little risky to invite a future admiral, but it is a power I'd rather not go against. I also got his devil fruit before. Is this another quirk of fate? Damien thought. Kuzan, don't think too much. I won't give you any handouts, just a place to train, hellishly at that. You can choose your path from then on. The boy's eyes soon began to clear up. What if I choose to leave? Damien just shrugged. No handouts. You get what you earn. I'll show you what the world hides from its everyday people. You can decide your fate then. Though at this point, his calm tone turned sharp. And if it goes against me, well, you would be wise not to get in my way. The 7-year-old broke out with an audible gulp as he saw Damien smile. He then cleared his throat. I agree, but I can at least rest often, right? Maybe 14 hours a day? Bam. A fist slammed onto the child's head and he rolled on the ground in pain. 8 hours of sleep is enough. This training guide should help you understand what's to come. Damien unconsciously showed a rather sadistic smile as he handed the sheet of paper that appeared out of nowhere. Kuzan skimmed through. Each line, each training routine brought an increasing amount of fear and apprehension to the boy's eyes. This should be the torture routine. Are you sure you're not insane? Damien shrugged. A wise man I once knew, like myself, would say, a small price to pay for salvation, you'll get used to it. Kuzan shook his head and dashed away. Unfortunately, a vice-like grip grasped his jacket as he flailed around in the air like a dying fish out of the sea. Don't worry, if you meet my expectations then I wouldn't mind giving you a suitable prize. He then kicked something into the sea. Splash. It was a wrapped-up, bloodied figure of a celestial dragon that Damien had borrowed from the prisoners. Roar. A Loch Ness monster like Sea King soon popped out from the water as it roared its arrival. The giant figure of the beast was gnawing away at the white-clothed noble all the while it glared at the two in front of it. Damien eyed the beast and a burst of overwhelming weight soon fell upon it. The Sea King shuddered and whimpered as it swallowed the celestial dragon whole, though stuck in place. Damien just glared at the sea monster and gave out an order. I want you to send this kid to Mortem Island a few days away. It was a mixture of Damien's newly conceived conqueror's hockey and voice of all living things which allowed him to command the weaker Sea Kings. Mortem Island was one of the many less than ideal locations Damien found through his years of study. No inhabitants. Unforgiving weather. Countless monsters. Endless threats. Perfect place for a near 7-year-old to thrive in their youth. But some precautions were needed for him to get there safely. If you in any way allow harm to the boy then I will personally feast on you in front of your children. The beast seemed to make a familiar audible gulp and it comically nodded its head. Damien hummed at the response and tossed the boy in his hand as if he were a sack of potatoes. Hey. Kuzan landed on the Sea King's back, barely keeping himself on board. I swear I'll sue you for child abuse one day. Damien waved at the whining boy. Good luck on the training. I'll make sure the Sea Kings properly educate you if you don't put your all into it. Kuzan gulped once more as he began to question his life choices. He saw them disappear into the horizon, leaving the lonesome Damien behind. A white paper that inched forward was soon pulled out, leading the way to his next destination. Looks like it's time to go meet up with the rest. I wonder what hell we'll meet us soon. To be continued. Author's Corner. Damien would fit well to line as chaotic neutral. Giving up his past kindness and embracing his new life as a pirate in the Rock's Arrow was needed to ever stand a chance of fulfilling his goals. Images. https://discord.gg/adishboob6q. Chapter 17. Trouble in Paradise. Published by Ranobes. One Piece. Path to Power. 2040 words. Ding ding. The cabin door creaked open, ringing the bells at the top. The 20 feet tall doors were quite the sight. It was the first time Damien had seen such an inclusive door design in the One Piece world, well, to an extent. Damien made his way through to a dimly lit bar, under the noisy interior. Damien scanned the audience and it didn't take long to see where he needed to be. It wasn't just the ginormous 19-foot-tall Kaido who was gulping down alcohol, or the tiny Shaki who was sitting beside him leaving quite the physical contrast. It was instead the other man who sat at the same table. He was seated but it wasn't hard to see that he was even larger than the 17-year-old Kaido. He had loose, gray trousers, an open green shirt that showcased his muscular upper chest, and a durag over his long, blonde hair. The giant pirate boasted a glorious mustache in the shape of a wide U shape. An equally large glaive leaned by his table as he drank some sake. Damien paused for a second as his mind instantly clicked on a name. Edward Newgate, the future world's strongest man, aka Whitebeard. His image, in Discord. The pause only lasted a second before he continued to the empty seat at the same table. You're here, Damien-chan, Shaki smiled. Whitebeard leaned forward a little as he lowered his alcohol barrel. Narrowing his eyes, he said, You're the kid who made all that noise just a while ago. Rox really sees me as a babysitter for the brats that interest him. Damien looked at the giant in front of him. Even though he said some annoyed words, his smirk carried another meaning. The young pirate simply shrugged. The Marines knew of our meetup here. Trouble was bound to appear anyway. Tap. The sake cup in the overpowering man slammed on the table. An eerie silence broke out that even the nearby pirates began to sweat. And yet something unexpected followed. Gurara. The nearly 22-foot tall pirate broke out into a rambunctious laugh. You're right, I'm sure Sengoku's golden ass was waiting for us anyways. I wish I could see his face when he sees what you did. Shaki sighed at the mess and shook her head. Boys will be boys. You got all the eternal lore? The eyes were soon diverted to Damien who was sipping on some alcohol. He nodded while waving a red pouch around. All here. Shaki gave a small smile and then gestured to the others. We should hurry to Fishman Island. Starting a war right under Marineford is too risky. Newgate slowly nodded after stopping his laugh. With the mess at Grove 1 we won't have too much trouble sneaking away. Shaki nodded in agreement. The ship is coded and ready. Let's go. Kaido just gave out a loud scoff. I'd rather take the chance to kill the Admiral right now. Maybe when you can take a punch from me and not get knocked out, Newgate responded as the others stood up to leave. Kaido grumbled but accepted the reason, ready to leave. Damien and Shaki also made their way out to the readied ship. Grove 1. Kong San will not be happy with this mess, a rather tall and bulky man muttered. He was a man draped with the usual marine coat, rocking a black suit underneath. He had a black afro and mustache paired with black circular glasses. A Marine Rear Admiral saluted the prestigious Marine. Admiral Sengoku, the Sabaody forces are at your disposal. Would you like us to scour the archipelago to find the perpetrators? According to sources they have dispersed all over. Naturally, he talked about the freed prisoners who mauled the world nobles. Sengoku image, in Discord. Sengoku shook his head. There were 4 celestial dragons but we only found 3, where is the final one? The Marine reporting had no answer. We have no clue, it seems St. Wilhelm disappeared, and maybe kidnapped for ransom by a pirate? Did you try their Vivre card? The Admiral questioned. The Marine in front of him looked to the ground in shame. What is it? Sengoku said with a turbulent feeling. Admiral, the celestial dragons didn't have Vivre cards made. Sengoku blinked and broke out in tension. What? How could that happen? The Rear Admiral shook in his socks but answered immediately, and no one has killed a noble in a long time. They've grown used to not needing such precautions. Sengoku sighed defeatedly. Then let's hope the saint was indeed kidnapped and not anything worse. Until then secure the archipelago. No one leaves without my notice. Roger that. The Admiral was about to leave to report but another Marine soon came running over. Admiral, he exclaimed between bated breaths, we located the Rocks pirates. Their ship is coded and readying to leave. Sengoku turned his attention immediately to the tired Marine. According to some unconfirmed rumor, the prisoners were freed by the Sin Incarnate, who was also spotted on the departing ship, the Marine reported. Sengoku, who is also known as the Resourceful General, naturally had some thoughts with this information. If he was responsible, then he may have kidnapped the celestial dragons. Rocks has a certain delight in harming the nobles. There's a chance the saint is with them. The Rear Admiral then gave his thoughts. Should we encircle them? How troublesome. Sengoku massaged his forehead in indecision. Keep your eyes on them, and notify the Marine unit at Fishman Island to maintain surveillance at their arrival. I already have 3 dead celestial dragons. I can't risk another dead. The Rear Admiral saluted the order and began to notify the Marines under him. And where's that fool? Sengoku questioned, though he soon felt a bad feeling. An answer soon echoed in his ears. He's what? Edge of Grove 50. A coated ship was moving towards an open area. Coating was a process in which a ship was coated with special resin from the Yarukuman mangroves, enabling it to sail underwater and survive the crushing depths of the ocean, such as at the bottom of the Red Line, and therefore, to Fishman Island. Kaido was playing with the steering wheel, earning a scolding from Shaki who was seemingly doing everything. Damien sat at the lookout tower and soon felt his observation hockey spike like crazy. Something was coming, the smell of a predator rushing towards its prey. We have company. Newgate, who was at the main deck, had already readied his weapon. Back up, brat, I'll handle this one. His heavy glaive thudded onto the ground as if he was readying himself. Get ready to dive the ship. At that, he had jumped. The entire ship sank a few meters from Whitebeard's hop as he arched into the sky. Thud. The large stature of the pirate whistled through the air and landed on solid ground with a boom. That wild dog, no care for backup or his surroundings, Whitebeard muttered at the sight of the black shadow rushing at him. It was a man in a simple white shirt and blue pants, galloping through the mangroves. He was clean-shaven with short black hair. A wide grin plastered to his face as the man raised his right hand. Asterisk FWWM. A pristine black coat of pure hockey was wrapped around, erupting with great power. Whitebeard raised his glaive as its bladed edge too was coated in hockey. Bawahaha, looks like the party's over here. The carefree man broke out into a boisterous laugh as he drove his fist in a primal motion toward the towering Whitebeard. Newgate just scoffed in irritation and shot his weapon at the coming fist, not withholding even an ounce of strength. And thus the two collided. Boom. Damien, who was watching from nearly 100 meters away, couldn't help but rebalance himself as the ship began to move chaotically from the shockwaves. The ground under the collision crumpled and was eradicated as the cracks and rumbles spread throughout the grove and began to shake Sabaody as a whole. The air blew like tornadoes in all directions, wrecking nearby buildings and even tree life as the two continued their clash. The bright archipelago was dulled out, seemingly turning gray. Wororo, what monstrous power. Damien could only concur as he could only watch. They aren't even at their peak and a casual hello can do this. Boom. Another secondary explosion resounded as the two men separated from their clash. Newgate and his adversary stood opposite to each other, nearly 20 meters in between. Gurara, Garp, you wild dog. The man in the simple clothes continued his smile as he cracked his knuckles. Even with all that power from Whitebeard, not a single cut remained on his hand. Garp image, in Discord. Newgate, I can go all day. But his fantasies came to an end quite fast. Garp, you bastard, I'm in charge here and I'm ordering you to stand down. A roar exploded through the grove. The cry of anger came from nearly half a kilometer away as another large marine made his way over. Garp picked his nose as if ignoring the yell. Hey, Newgate, you heard anything there? I think my ears are a little blocked today. I know you heard me, Garp. Stand down. The figure of the admiral landed on the wrecked land. The priority is the celestial dragon, you know that. Garp harumphed in disdain. Hey, I say you feed them to the Sea Kings, at least that way they'd have some use. Sengoku grew livid, steam almost sizzled off his angered face. The two began to argue back and forth as Whitebeard was left as a third wheel. He saw the mess and returned to the ship. I guess one of the dragons made it out. Let's leave before another admiral shows up. Shaki concurred as the diving procedure began and the coating expanded. Oe, Sengoku, you really want to let them go? I thought the higher-ups wanted those two brats on the ship there. Sengoku, who had calmed down, also grew solemn. In the case the saint was taken by them, it's best to save them stealthy rather than sinking their ship. I'll ask for CP0 to take the lead. Garp just shrugged, whatever, just give me my monthly rice crackers and we'll call it a day. The vice admiral then walked away, probably to some spa nearby. Sengoku was left sighing again and again. I hope it all works out. It's been over a decade since a celestial dragon was killed, let alone 3. I just hope it doesn't become 4. He then reached in for his snail and ordered. All troops, work in full force to find news on that last saint. No one goes off work until he is found. On the ship. Shaki Nei, I take it our shipbuilder is somewhere in the New World. Is that our next destination? The woman, who was puffing a cigarette, nodded. He's someone who will put together the ship the captain wants. Since we now have the wood and metal ready, we just need to get it to him. Damien slowly nodded. Whitebeard then chimed in. Show me the ore Rocks was so fond of. Damien nodded and swiped the red pouch in his hand. Asterisk flunk. A large piece of ore soon fell on the deck with a thud. Whitebeard pulled out a piece of the crimson ore and examined it. Nothing I've seen before, hopefully, it's worth the effort. Shaki nodded from the side as she puffed out another cloud of smoke. Well, we completed our mission regardless. She then changed the subject. I wonder where that celestial dragon is that they're so concerned about. Damien, who had begun to dine on some snacks, raised his hand. Oh that, I fed him to the Sea Kings. After all, it's our responsibility to keep the cycle of life running. Gurara. Wororo. Ufufufu. Rahahaha. 4 types of odd laughs bellowed within the confines of the bubble as they heard the answer that could lead to the destruction of entire kingdoms and civilizations. To be continued. Author's Corner. Images. https://discord.gg/adishboob6q. Chapter 18. 18. To the Deep. Published by Ranobes. One Piece. Path to Power. 2,540 words. Mariejoy. Pangaea Castle. Mariejoy was located on the Red Line on the opposite side of the world from Reverse Mountain and served as the official route for people to cross between the two halves of the Grand Line. The other path was under the Red Line by coding a ship. Image of Mariejoy, in Discord. The capital of the world government's interest was here, 10,000 meters in the sky. It was here that the very top members of the government, alongside the celestial dragons, reside. Even beyond the city is the Pangaea Castle, which was allegedly home to the supreme authority of the world government, the Five Elders. Mariejoy was protected by the Commander-in-Chief, Chief of Cypher Pole and Cypher Pole, Igus, Zero and the mysterious God's Knights. Pangaea Castle, Room of Authority. Brilliant light entered through the wide open windows, gracing the chamber with incredibly clean air. Gold-plated walls, white furniture and grand architecture, an air of authority concentrated amongst the 5 who sat at the majestic room's center. 5 Elders images, in Discord. The Elder with the sword, Saint Ethenbaron V. Nedjero, sat on the sofa and placed a single bounty poster on the table. I not D. Damien, are we surprised the chaos was caused by D? He sarcastically said. The blonde elder, Saint Shepherd Jew Peter, the youngest looking one, also gave his thoughts. Not only that, this Damien has now joined under that rock's flag, alongside another troublesome young pirate named Kaido. This is no longer about the unruly pirates, it's about the constant challenges to the world government's authority. It has been questioned again and again. The scarred elder, Saint J. Garcia Saturn, chimed in. The long-bearded elder, Saint Marcus Mars, also spoke. It's best to keep a tight lid on the news. We cannot allow things to get out of hand. Keeping them in the chaotic new world is best. Let them kill each other. And this, sin incarnate. His father was a problem and it seems the apple didn't fall far from the tree. The death of 3 celestial dragons is on his hands. The last elder, Saint Topman Warcury, clenched his fist. It is best to nip them in the bud before they can truly sprout and blossom, he said in a tired tone. However, the overlords of the seas and the other bad names are draining our forces. Focusing on the future threats while allowing the present one to thrive is not without mistake. Shing. The V. Nedjero unsheathed his blade just enough for his reflection to shine at the razor-sharp metal. Let Cypher Pole surveil them at Fishman Island, have the Navy ready to catch them when they resurface to the New World. Outside of that, we need to curb the ambition of that Zebek. He's far too dangerous to be left alive. The same day. The ship was a little overcrowded. Damien was given a small room, just large enough for him to lie down in. Unfortunately, Kaido and Whitebeard did not have this luxury. The dive to Fishman Island would take a couple of hours. Damien had just walked into his room to take a nap but suddenly felt a familiar tingle. Asterisk Kurup. His shadow seemed to grow fluid as a figure jumped out, an instance of deja vu. Damien's hand was instantly locked on the arm of the attacker and began to flail in the air. Even if I can't sense you when hidden, you're just too slow. Damien used this moment to examine the one attempting to take his life while she struggled in his grip. The body was covered in a black shawl, a dark hood covering the face. Now, go to sleep. Bam. Trouble? Shaki's voice echoed in the hallway as Damien looked by the door that was ajar. A stowaway. Shaki eyed the knocked out assassin and hummed, looks like one of the bounty hunters who terrorizes cocky pirates, the terror of Sabaody. Praise on either the fools who want to haphazardly waltz into the new world or those running from it, suspected of having a rather special Logia fruit. The ether fruit. Damien scratched his chin in intrigue while pulling up the fruit's details in his mind. Ether fruit. Say no mi. Logia fruit. Fruit rating, 6.5 stars. Allows the user to create, control, and transform into ether at will, turning them into an ethereal human. Expanded. Ether is the element that fills the universe beyond terrestrial space. It has void-like properties alongside the ability to travel in places absent of light. Shaki blew out a puff of smoke and continued. She has ties with Blackfish, Baro, an underworld emperor, but knowing Baro it's nothing good. Naturally, Shaki was well versed in what happens in the world hidden away, where the rats make sneaky deals, the underworld. Shaki clicked her tongue. Didn't think she'd be so young. How pitiful to be scrounging for big names. Damien shrugged, unaware of hockey, just a cocky Logia user. Shaki hummed in agreement, then asked, gonna kill her? Damien gazed at the unconscious assassin in his room. She tried to kill me twice now, so it's not unfounded. But it would be a waste of a good fruit. Fleet Admiral's office, Marineford. Are you sure it's confirmed? Kong's tired voice questioned the snail before him. Yes, Fleet Admiral, CP1 found someone who confirmed that the missing saint was dumped into the sea by the sin incarnate. The phone then hung up, leaving the top marine sitting, lost. Those dastardly D only bring storms of trouble every time they appear. 3 hours later. This broken ship would have gotten us here faster if it was in decent condition, Shaki complained. The shockwaves from that man-ape Garp and Newgate-kun left it barely mobile. Newgate, who was drinking while leaning on the side, could only sigh. Garp may be a wild dog but he's strong. Kaido also appeared while crashing his cannibal club into the ground, Rororo. I can't wait to be strong enough to fight him. The others just rolled their eyes at his words. It wasn't the first time he uttered it and it won't be the last. Soon all the eyes were diverted to the side of the ship. Rar. A school of sea kings soon appeared as they surrounded the ship, their mouths salivating. It was almost pitch black from the depth of their dive and the monsters were barely visible. Shaki looked up and clapped her hands. Dinner is here. Another hour later. The darkness of the sea was soon brightly lit, almost as if the sun had risen undersea. So this is Fishman Island, truly a wondrous sight, Damien muttered as he saw it. The island itself is a home for fishmen and merfolk. It serves as an underwater gateway to the new world for those who do not wish to enter through the Combelt. The island resides in a giant double-layered bubble floating above the seafloor, seemingly filled with about half water and reef and half air. Ryugu Palace rested in a smaller bubble on top of the main island's bubble. It was illuminated by the sunlight tree that grew down from the red line for a whole 10 kilometers. Fishman Island image, in Discord. The band of pirates was still a ways away from the island, but it being the only source of light for endless darkness made it quite conspicuous. Damien walked back to his room to see something. And indeed it was true, he had sensed a change in breathing from the assassin. She was awake. Rise and shine, I know you're conscious. His voice resounded in the room as the cloaked figure trembled. Ah, a groan escaped from under the black cloak as she failed to even get up. Those are seastone shackles, credit to our cook who has quite the stash of goodies. Damien then sat on the tiny sofa and peered at his attacker. The figure had given up on struggling through the hold and eventually climbed out from the cloak, exposing who was hidden below. Damien's eyebrow was raised as he examined the so-called terror of Sabaody. She had a dark purple dress that went down to her thighs. Purple arm sleeves that left her shoulders exposed alongside a color-matching hood that covered much of her violet hair, leaving the bangs to hide her forehead. Image of the assassin, in Discord. She was around Shaki's height. You're much younger than I felt, thought, Damien said. The girl looked a few years older than himself. She didn't reply, just glared at Damien with indignation. Don't look at me like that, he shrugged. I only broke your sternum, maybe punctured a lung or two. He then saw her relatively healed appearance. If anything, I guess a Logia user can heal such injuries quite easily. Well, anyways. Damien's eyes then grew serious as a powerful burst of oppression fell upon the girl. Her vexed face soon warped into fear and pain as the waves of pressure fell upon her body, causing her to shrink into the bed. I have a few questions for you. The overwhelming haki imposed on her slowly receded as the panting girl tried to regain her composure. The girl tried her best to hide her heavy breathing as she spat out, "Just kill me." Damien slightly leaned forward with a smile. "You sure? Seems like you have some mission to accomplish that perhaps requires the money on my head. Are you sure you can die now?" His words invoked a tremble in her body as her face failed to hide the worry. "You tried to kill me," he addressed. "So me sparing you is equal to you owing me a great debt." Her purple eyes shot up with certain confusion. "Why you'll let me go?" Damien slowly nodded. "Your devil fruit has great uses. Killing you means a future enemy might get their hands on this power, so I rather have it on my side. You have some deal with an underground emperor, right?" She nodded in honesty. "Barrow asked me for 3 billion berries for his help for my revenge. Your bounty will finish my hunt." Damien scoffed in return. "You actually take the word of those rats hiding in the sewers? You want vengeance, then you need the necessary strength." The girl seemed to lower her head in a mix of shame at his words, leaving the room to silence. Meanwhile, a few thoughts sprang up in the pirate's mind as he played out a few scenarios in his mind. Eventually, Damien pitched a thought. "We'll probably stay here for a few weeks to repair the ship. Until then I'll teach you the basics of haki, the same ability I used to hit you even though you were a Logia." "Haki?" she reiterated absently. "If you can grasp even a thin fragment of haki in that time, then perhaps my investment can be worthwhile." Damien saw the bright flame in her eyes. Perhaps if he hadn't lived his previous life, he may have embarked on a similar path, recklessly chasing vengeance without any thought for preparation, grabbing at anything light of hope. "What do I call you?" Damien casually said as he got up to leave the room. The girl followed and slowly gave her answer. "Aurora, my name is Aurora." Creak. The door opened as the pirate walked out of the room in the inner sanctum, the bounty hunter following behind with some trepidation. Her eyes widened as she saw the surroundings of the main deck of the ship. The weary vessel was encased with a transparent coating. Though the expected perpetual darkness of being undersea was not there, rather, there were around 1,000 pairs of eyes glaring at the ship with ill intent. Their skin colors ranged from blue, green, peach, purple, red, and so on. Fins and tails were present in some, though every single one of them had gills. Their weapons were ready as they locked onto the intruding ship, numbering in the tens of thousands. Bam. Kaido's giant club slammed onto the floor as a wide grin was smeared across his face. "Wororo, look like you little fishies want to fight, bring it on." Shaki raised her beloved pistol, not showing any signs of fear in the face of great threats. The truth was that they were around 10,000 meters below the sea. If the coating were to burst, then things could get messy fast. But a large hand was soon put in Kaido's way as Whitebeard slowly walked ahead. "We don't need to fight." He then saw a giant merman rushing through the masses of fishmen. A golden trident in his hand as he warily watched the intruders. He was around 40 feet tall with a red nose, small eyes, and long thick orange curly hair. His puffy orange beard covered the majority of his lower face and his entire mouth. 40 feet equals 12.2 meters. "It's you, Newgate." The future emperor also seemed welcoming as he nodded. "Neptune, been a while since I've seen you." The ginormous merman then gestured to the others. "Stand down, he's a friend Jammin." Shaki whispered to Damien, "That's the great knight, Neptune, the highest-ranking soldier of Ryugu Palace. Newgate-san has some history with him." Damien nodded at the information. After all, Neptune is the future king of Fishman Island. Soon the ship began to enter the island as it passed through each bubble. As the coating was removed, the ship creaked its final cry and fell apart. Cracks and scars covered the vessel as future travel seemed impossible. Damien breathed in the fresh, coastal air as he marveled at the beauty of the island. "Can I ask for your help in fixing the ship, Neptune?" Whitebeard asked as the party landed on open soil. The merman seemed hesitant. "That'll be hard, Jammin," he admitted with a heavy expression. "The king is ill and the appearances of humans looking to capture our own have increased a lot. Me letting you in is already the height of our patience." Damien, who stood nearby, had to agree. Based on my readings, Fishman Island has been at war with human traffickers and pirates for decades upon decades. It's no wonder it feels so tense, he thought, feeling the distant glares from all directions. Though the fishmen had stood down at Neptune's command, they remained nearby, ready to fight. Great aggression emanated from them. Whitebeard looked at the wrecked ship. Shaki was going to offer a possible solution, but something else happened. An emaciated fishman soon swam over in a great hurry, attracting the eyes of everyone. "It's you," he exclaimed. The fishman was pointing at the red-eyed young pirate with stunned eyes. "I couldn't thank you before. You probably didn't see me, but I was one of the ones you freed from Sabaody." Neptune's eyes widened as he asked, "T the one who killed the celestial dragons?" Gulp. The giant merman took a deep breath and then gestured to the fishman around him. "Perhaps we can help with repairing your ship after all, Jammin." To be continued. Author's Corner. Images. https://discord.gg/edishboob6q. Chapter 19. Let It Flow. Published by Ranobes. One Piece. Path to Power. 2,540 words. How this become about me? Damien muttered with some confusion. Shaki elbowed him from the side. "Looks like you saved us from some trouble, Damien-chan." The young pirate in question just cleared his throat and firmly said, "It was all part of my plan." The words evoked a giggle from the woman as the two waited for the giant merman to finish his words. Neptune regained his bearings and gave an option. "Let's go talk someplace more fitting, Jammin." Ryugu Palace. "The current king is sick and cannot meet you, but I will speak on behalf of our people, Jammin," Neptune said as he stood beside the throne. Damien and co had been invited to the palace, a wondrous place with a giant golden dragon hoisted behind it. The huge doors that spanned dozens of meters alongside the coral and undersea flowers created quite the contrast. Rainbow light bathed the palace with breathtaking majesty. Image of the palace, in Discord. "You should know of our anger to humans, Jammin," the merman said with a sigh. "Even though we are under the government, our home is not protected by them, so we have to fight back with everything we have." Newgate sat down on the ground while hearing the words. "And yet you agreed to help," Shaki said as she puffed out a cloud of smoke. Neptune nodded. "Though our people, myself included, hate humans more than ever, many will change their perspective after the news of you killing the world nobles, Jammin." Ho ho ho, the irony leaves me speechless. The Knight of the Sea then calmed down and addressed a question. "How long will you stay here?" Newgate looked up to the towering fishman and roughly estimated, 3 weeks should be enough for the repairs and new coating. Neptune just nodded. "Make yourself at home, just be understanding of any stairs, Jammin." A little while later. "The repairs will begin tomorrow. Some young merman by the name of Den will oversee it," Shaki said while getting some belongings from the ship. "Your little prisoner is in your room. You're more of a playboy than I thought. You won't attack me in my sleep, right?" she teasingly said. Damien rolled his eyes. "I don't have time for such things." Shaki then looked at Damien and lightly hummed. "Don't get too lost in your path to power. It will leave you lonely," she said with an air of helplessness. The woman then hopped off the ship and went to her own devices. Damien fell in some thought but eventually shook his head and went back to his room. Creak. He saw the girl sitting on the ground, lost in thought. "Killing saints," she muttered to the person who came in. "I didn't think there'd be such crazy people in this world." Damien just gave a small laugh. "Rahahaha, Sabaody is probably in a full lockdown. The news of the deaths will surely leave them in shambles." The celestial dragon's troubles were music to the pirate's ears. Damien then changed the subject to something else. "You were able to dive into and out of my shadow back then," he began. "Tell me more about that." Aurora looked up and hesitated for a second before answering truthfully. "I can enter what I call the night realm with my powers. It's a separate world, and it allows me to carry out my bounty hunting with great efficiency." Damien nodded at the words, a perfect power for an assassin. While thinking inside, a separate world. Kinda like the Door fruit or the mirror world made by the mirror fruit. "Take me into it." Click. The sea stone shackles were unlocked, leaving behind a shocked Aurora. You. Damien shrugged. Hurry up now. The girl looked up with mixed thoughts but then nodded. Her hand reached out to grab Damien's arm. Asterisk Kurup. Purple energy soon enveloped him as he felt weightlessness. Soon both were pulled down and into his very shadow, leaving behind an empty room. Damien's senses went haywire as he felt his balance fall and turn upside down and inside out. It only lasted a second till he rose out from his shadow once more. To this time the usual scenery of his room was there, but it was as if he was seeing the world through purple-tinted glasses. The surroundings were coated with violet energy, giving everything a rather unsettling look. I can't sense things beyond this world, but I can move around without problem, he muttered. Aurora just watched, still a little unsure of her decision to let Damien in. Her eyes soon cleared up and she spoke up. Yes, I can move around here and go back to reality by leaving through the shadows. Damien saw his room. His bed was casting a shadow that felt like a gateway. He then looked at the girl. I wasn't wrong in not killing you, Damien said. How about it? I will give you the tools to fulfill your vengeance, and if you succeed, you will work under me. Damien had certain aspirations to control power beyond the scope of a pirate. An area that existed in the gray zone between the Navy and the pirates. He needed fitting personnel to oversee this. The choice to gain power at the cost of working for the man whom she had tried to kill had left Aurora a little befuddled. Recalling the hockey and its evident strength cleared up that fog. He has no reason to lie, she thought. Damien saw her ambivalent expression and added a little fire. Before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. The girl was instantly lost in Damien's profound words, not knowing he had shamelessly stolen it from a wise person from his previous life. A few moments passed and Aurora came to a decision. I'll do it. The following night, Damien decided to give the assassin girl a main goal to give up her sight and focus on her surroundings solely on her devil fruit power, experimenting if her ability to sense the darkness around her could awaken observation hockey. He also had a different task of his own. 3 weeks before entering the final sea, my devil fruit mastery is still stuck, but perhaps that man can help me. He eventually made his way to an abandoned area of Fishman Island. It was far from the main populace and under some coral hills. Damien studied the terrain and found his target. You wandered all the way here, brat. The young pirate gave a helpless laugh at his senses, once again being fooled by the much stronger pirate that was sitting atop the hill with a barrel of alcohol. Damien jumped to the top and stood near the giant man with the white stash. Asterisk Gurup asterisk the man drank the liquid while watching the sunlight retrieve. What do you think the Marines will do? The younger pirate casually asked. Whitebeard paused his drinking and gave a casual answer. Hey, don't expect much truth. They've been extinguishing Rock's actions for a while now. A cover-up is natural. Damien nodded at the words. They don't have resources for anything more down here. The new world is too chaotic. The man then drank a few more liters of the drink. In the middle of his gulping of alcohol, Newgate took another glance at Damien and narrowed his eyes. A year ago Rock sent me to bring Kaido to him, and now you, he said. But you're not like that war-driven fool. Why come under Rock's flag? Damien looked at the man more than twice his size and answered, I want strength. Newgate looked away from the youth and went back to drinking. The only thing you'll find at the Hachinosu is the worst scum of mankind. Whitebeard's eyes changed. They grew fiery. The sea can't be tamed by a bunch of fools who lack a moral code. They'll kill themselves before grasping even a hand of power. The cliff began to tremble with slight vibrations at the annoyed pirate. Damien took a breath and asked, why do you stay under rocks then? A silence broke out as the giant man once again glared at the young pirate beside him. His sharp eyes befell the youth with an expressionless face. Asterisk Gurup. Newgate gave a slight sigh and drank another few mouthfuls of sake. Just repaying a debt, he said. Though his tone shifted to a more yearning one. I'm also searching for something. Damien naturally asked, what's that? A family. Whitebeard glanced at the boy who simply nodded. He raised his eyebrow and couldn't help but ask, you don't find that odd? Damien just smiled with a shrug. Who am I to judge? Whitebeard lowered his sake cup subconsciously. Gurara, you're a funny kid. The two then returned to a brief silence as Damien voiced out. I came here for a favor. And what's that? Damien turned his gaze to the future emperor. I've been at the threshold with my devil fruit. He then touched a coral sticking out of the ground. The sound of pixelation resounded as the coral glowed red for a second and then exploded into tiny pieces, too many to count. Whitebeard seemed interested in the power, seeing it for the first time. Oh, it's a dangerous power but fits a bold kid like you. Damien then allowed some of the red mist to sizzle out of his palm as he examined it from close up. I ate the pulverized fruit and became a pulverizing human, he explained. The power is listed as the same destruction class fruits as yours. Whitebeard completed his sentence. And you think that I can help you? He then put his jug of sake by the side and stood up, casting a giant shadow toward the rocky terrain. Suddenly, the man reeled in his right fist, almost driving it into his opposite shoulder. He then swung it forward. Crack. The air soon creaked and shattered like glass as the incredible power shook the very ground the two were on. It was an astonishing sight of a single punch quite literally shattering the fabric of space. Following the attack, a powerful wave of expanding air and concentrated destruction shot out and traveled to a nearby hill. Boom, rumble. The hill exploded into a rain of debris with dust. The tremor fruit, the power that could destroy the world. Whitebeard then grabbed his drink once again and sat down. You saw it? The difference in how I use my power. Damien thought it over and arrived at an epiphany. I see, he slowly said. You let the full power loose without any attempt to control it, rather than to forcefully direct it. Whitebeard nodded at the words. When it comes to a destructive and volatile force, trying to control it will only limit its power. But it can be hard to fully concentrate your power efficiently, especially when it is so devastating. Damien nodded in agreement, his eyes soon wandering to the large glaive resting on the ground. Is that why you use that weapon? It helps further concentrate your attacks? The large pirate grinned. That's right, maybe you should look for a suitable weapon too. A weapon, Damien thought. But he then turned his attention elsewhere. He gazed at the red energy emanating from his palm. They were tiny crystalline shapes that slowly rose out in a frenzy manner. Rather than controlling it, it's better to embrace its destructibility. Damien's mind was spitfiring thoughts as Whitebeard just watched in intrigue. Soon Damien's body began to gather the red energy from every pore and directed it to his palm. Rather than locking them down into his hand, he instead began to allow it to flow out. Asterisk clue. The emergence of such energy summoned screeches from the air that had recently been shattered and were now being crushed apart. Damien waved his glowing hand as a large stream of crimson energy exploded out and began to form a field surrounding him. The crimson dome soon fell upon the land and began to crush and ravage everything within. Hiss. The air violently shrieked as if everything nearby had begun to tremble and shred apart. The field expanded to around 10 meters in all directions. Crimson lines shot out from Damien's body, mimicking magnetic field lines, digging and drilling into everything within its scope. Fruit mastery has reached the intermediate stage. Whitebeard chuckled at the sight of Damien's reveling in his newfound power. He opened his palm and felt the crimson energy drilling into his skin, leaving it numb, another monstrous brat. Midnight. Damien had left Whitebeard's resting area feeling energized. His new powers allowed him to expand his influence into the nearby area, crushing everything within a certain area. It even reminded Damien of the level of awakening of a paramecia fruit, but naturally, it wasn't it. Sybil, tell me a little on awakening a devil fruit, he asked in his mind. It is the final stage of a fruit power, vastly stronger and more supreme than any fruit applications beforehand. She continued, awakening a devil fruit is not easy. If anything, you can use the star count of a power to realize its difficulty. Damien stopped in his tracks. Awakened paramecia from what I recall in my past life were Doflamingo, Katakuri, Kid, and Law. Damien then listed each fruit based on their masteries, referring to the vast array of knowledge he had obtained 2 years ago in Sybil's insights. String fruit 5.5 stars. Mochi fruit 6 stars. Magnet fruit 6.5 stars. Opo fruit 7 stars. Doflamingo's power was quite powerful in his hands, but it seemed to reach a certain threshold and simply could never go beyond. It was rather Doflamingo's intelligence and knowledge that made him a grave threat. Based on his fruit rating, it would be fairly easy to awaken in the hands of someone with a high affinity to the power. Katakuri's fruit was sitting at 6 stars. This would make it a step harder to awaken than the string fruit. The same idea was expanded to the magnet fruit. It was at the same level as Damien's fruit power, with the ability to wreak havoc of great proportions. Kid had awakened in his early 20s, an impressive feat. The Opo fruit is ranked as a 7-star fruit. No wonder it was so damn broken. The pirate exclaimed. Such a fruit was coined as an ultimate class devil fruit by Sybil. The difficulty in awakening such ultimate fruits can vary. They are the ones that can manipulate the laws of nature and reality. Such a fruit rating should be harder to awaken, yet Law did it by the age of 26. Is it the will of D? Damien asked himself. My fruit power should awaken naturally in 6 or so years, he calculated. Yet God Valley will happen much earlier than that. The young pirate clenched his hand, ambition once again fueling his spirit. It's too slow. I'll need to step up my game. To be continued. Author's Corner. Damien died after the release of Chapter 1030. The same chapter Laws and Kids Awakening was first shown. Images. https://discord.gg/adishboob6q. Chapter 20. The New World is Dark and Full of Terrors. Published by Ranobes. One Piece. Path to Power. 3,000 words. 3 weeks later. Boom. A grand spectacle broke out as cracks formed in the air while crimson currents surged on the receiving end. A huge shockwave raged on and shattered apart the red barrage of energy as the ground warped in return. First, it was ripped apart, followed by exploding into innumerable pieces. Damn, that hurts. A young voice resounded as a body stepped out from a huge cluster of debris formed by a collapsed hill. The young man had black hair with red streaks running down the left side. Sharp, red pupils gazed at the ginormous pirate casually standing a few tens of meters away. You really don't like pulling your punches, Newgate-san. Gurarara, the giant man laughed. What's the problem, kid? Your body recovers pretty fast. Even though he said it rather offhandedly, Whitebeard was quite surprised. He had been humoring Damien's crazed thirst for fast growth by giving him a daily dose of bone-rattling earthquakes. If only he knew that Damien was trying to further increase his anatomy and devil fruit mastery by taking the brunt of a natural disaster. Dusting off his shoulders, the bold pirate shot forth without much care from the damage from before. Asterisk Vivush. The air whistled as Damien appeared right before the towering Whitebeard. Hey, let's see you stand up from this one, kid. Asterisk Kurup. A glowing white orb bubbled around the infamous pirate's left fist. Damien did not waver, wrapping his hockey-clad fist that began to boil with volatile crimson energy. The attacks collided. Boom. Damien gritted his teeth as he felt his entire left arm go numb as if thousands of needles were drilling into his very bones. The energy from his hand sprinted forth endless currents of pulverizing energy as they swamped towards the overpowering Whitebeard. Newgate grinned slightly as his fist slowly began to shift ahead, pushing back Damien's blazing attack. Boom. Another explosion followed as the young pirate was shot into another faraway hill, effectively drilling right in. A dull silence arrived as the restless air began to calm down in the wake of the recent clash. Newgate looked down at his fist and squinted his eyes in interest. You're copying hockey emission with your powers, he smirked. It stings, kid. Rumble. Soon the huge pile of destroyed earth trembled as a body slowly stood up, clawing its way out. Damien's arm was bleeding, his forearm broken, a bone visibly protruding out. Crunch. The young man pushed the bone back into place, eliciting a dull groan. Yet the pained expression was washed away, replaced with a wry smile. You're not even using any hockey. My power is really nothing worth mentioning. Gurarara, don't sell yourself short, Whitebeard said, walking toward Damien. You did well to trim my nails. Damien rolled his eyes. The two pirates had become more natural in their interactions with each other. Damien appreciated the future emperor's help in training while Whitebeard was impressed by the rookie pirate's perseverance. Damien's routine was, wake up, eat, guide Aurora for a few hours while practicing observation hockey, eat, train his fruit and armament hockey with Whitebeard, eat, train in combat with some senior fishmen who had welcomed him after freeing their people, eat, sleep, and repeat. A schedule that would leave most with broken spirits and shivered timbers, yet to Damien, it was just another day. Yet even now I stand little to no chance against the real monsters of this world. That is the thought that drove him to continuously claw at every opportunity to get stronger, subconsciously warding away all other shackles. A while later, Damien had collected himself and left for an area northeast of Fishman Island. Just yesterday some mermaids had come to give him an invitation from Neptune to come there. Sybil, bring up my stats, he said while making his way to the location. Coming right up. I not D. Damien. Age, 16 years, 4 months, 11 days. Height, 10 feet 4 inches, 3.15 meters. Status, tired, injured. Strength, middle tier Yonko commander. Devil fruit, pulverized fruit, intermediate mastery. Fruit rating, 6.5 stars. Sea stone resistance, 69.7%. Skills, lightning recovery, mighty vitality, evolable anatomy, voice of all living things, will of D, Rokushiki. Hockey, observation hockey, intermediate mastery, armament hockey, intermediate mastery, conqueror's hockey, initial mastery. Even after all that beating my anatomy isn't ready to evolve, Damien said out loud with some uncertainty. It seemed the gap between strength would only grow, that simply meant he needed to try harder and get beat up some more. He then turned to another string of text. Conqueror's hockey? Something one could not train, rather it would grow with one's own mental status and overall strength. Sybil, based on my memories, who would be a rival in strength? Damien asked. The reply came fast. At your current strength, you could go equally against the likes of Smoothie or Jozu. But there was one thing Damien was able to gauge after the 3-week time skip. Show me Whitebeard's current profile. Edward Newgate. Age, 32 years, 2 months, 19 days. Height, 21 feet 10 inches, 6.66 meters. Status, thriving. Devil fruit, tremor fruit. Fruit rating, 7 stars, ultimate class fruit. Hockey, observation hockey, armament hockey, advanced mastery, conqueror's hockey. Strength, within Yonko stage. Without a doubt, the readings were missing in detail. Such imprecise results were credited to Damien's weak observation hockey and strength. Garp's exchange with Whitebeard was the only reason I could gauge the armament hockey. I still need a lot of training, Damien sighed as he reached his destination. He saw a ginormous merman not too far, simply gazing into the distance. You called me to the sea forest, Neptune, Damien said as he landed by the knight's side. The fishman hummed towards the young pirate. The mermaids have shown you around the island, all but this place. He then turned his eyes to the wasteland surrounded by giant trees. An enormous ship sat on the far horizon. Noah. This is the sea forest, the final area you have yet to see. Perhaps it was Neptune showing his goodwill to Damien, or maybe it was something else, but naturally, Damien wouldn't mind since Fishman Island was a special place. Come with me, Jammin. The two went through the rather well-lit area that was littered with destroyed ships and debris, a result of being at the bottom of the seafloor. Damien squinted his eyes as he felt a foreign voice from afar. Someone, was calling to him. He made his way over to the cove, within a depression surrounded by a ring of rocks. At the very center stood a large, blue cube-shaped stone, carved with ancient words and symbols. Poneglyphs, Neptune came as well as he said, it's the ancient script that has sat here for centuries now, Jammin. Image of the poneglyph, in Discord. Damien nodded, not exactly surprised by the steal. His eyes soon drifted to the side where an equally large stone sat. The only difference was that it was deep red in color. That is, Damien unconsciously gulped as he saw the poneglyph. One of the road poneglyphs. The combined locations detailed by all 4 road poneglyphs allow one to locate Laugh-Tale, therefore, becoming the king of the pirates. Damien recalled that this steal was eventually lost a few years after Roger read its contents, quite a suspicious outcome. Image of the road poneglyph, in Discord. Damien sighed, he could not read the stone, not yet anyway. He then fixed his eyes back on the blue stone. It was the stone that called out to him. The one that pulled him here. An apology, Joy Boy, Damien muttered as the whispers echoed in his ears. Why, you can read it, Neptune yelped from the side. Damien slowly shook his head. This poneglyph was written by someone consciously, not simply to detail knowledge or lost history, but carved with quite a lot of emotion, Damien explained. Forgive me? A distant yet tired voice that left the young pirate solemn. I can hear the ancient voice, in whispers, but it's there. Neptune was breathing heavily. While the giant merman was lost in thought, Damien reached out to the stone. There was something else there, he could feel it. *FWOO. An orb of white energy soon shot out from the core of the poneglyph towards Damien. The young pirate grabbed the ball of energy and analyzed it. It was some sort of glowing orb. Upon inspection, the ball was an odd thing, it was neither cold nor hot. It had no weight. It almost felt like it did not even exist. A description soon surfaced in his mind, bringing clarity. Memory shard, 1 of 3. Collect all 3 shards to unlock the message left behind by the original system user. Huh? A voice soon erupted in Damien's mind, it was Sybil. Damien, this seems to be a piece of the key to my locked data. Damien thought over the information he had just gotten. Soon the white energy was absorbed into the red-eyed youth's hand and disappeared like such. Such a scene left him thinking. I guess I'll find them eventually. I wonder if the original user had ties with Joy Boy in some way. Damien thought. Meanwhile, Neptune woke up from his daze and did not comment on the memory shard, as if it was invisible. Damien-kun, I guess this wraps up the tour, Jammin, he muttered, still shaken about the steal's words. Neptune then reached into his pocket and took out a sheet of paper. It looked comically tiny in his hands, but it was only slightly too small in Damien's. This came in recently. It's dated 15 days ago, but news takes time to reach down here, Jammin. Damien eyed the newspaper and scoffed. A band of pirates headed by the Sin Incarnate besieged the world nobles at Sabodi Archipelago. All pirates besides Inadi Damien were apprehended. Neptune nodded at Damien's annoyance. The government is very keen on keeping things as much in control as they can, Jammin. Damien nodded with a slight sigh. No news on the 4 dead dragons. They even erased all mention of Newgate San or any words on the rocks pirates. Though his eyes fell upon a string of words, the World News Agency. Neptune scratched his glorious orange beard and chimed in a few thoughts of his own. It is the news agency under full control of the world government. It's one of their greatest tools, Jammin. No wonder the government had no trouble erasing the rocks pirates from history, Damien surmised. A disdainful smile soon appeared on Damien's face. The government wants to bastardize history? I can't let that happen. Rather, it's best to take it into my hands. Damien pondered for a second. He inputted the parameters and said, Sybil, ready the task, codename, Nexus, with a due date of 1486, he ordered. Got it. Following that, he inputted a few parameters. Operation Nexus. Find World News Agency main base. Find replacement president. Bring the replacement under control. Have the agency exit the world government's grasp. Time limit 1486. A wise man once said, whoever controls the media, controls the mind. Damien didn't exactly care much about what the commoners of the world thought of him. Rather, it was a tool that would greatly serve his purpose in controlling, or at least, somewhat slowing the government down. In the current era, the world government could do just about anything and get away with it. Much like how later on Morgans was able to drive the world in certain wavelengths by his reports. Damien wanted such power too. Naturally, allowing the soon-to-come God Valley incident to drain away in forgetfulness was rather unsightly as well. Beyond that, a fitting president could also do great in sending information. Plop. A small sheet of paper then fell out from the newspaper and onto the seafloor, interrupting Damien's train of thought. He looked below and gave a small smile. Naturally, it was a bounty. Wanted. Less than INA.operator D.operator Damien greater than. Less than Sin Incarnate greater than. Less than B300 million greater than. Less than dead or alive greater than. The number doubled, most likely the pissed off nobles trying to hunt me down for my sins. Nearby. So, you're leaving now, the distant yet soft voice resounded from the cave. It was a large clearing made within one of the large coral hills in the outer parts of Fishman Island. The area where Damien and Aurora were training. He answered. Your devil fruit goes a little too well with observation hockey, it's quite impressive. Damien was talking while glancing at a screen within his mind. Amethyst Aurora. Age, 17 years, 1 month, 26 days. Height, 7 feet 4 inches. Status, healthy. Devil fruit, ether fruit, intermediate mastery. Fruit rating, 6.5 stars. Hockey, observation hockey, initial mastery. Strength, Yonko crew pirate. To think the stowaway I picked up was a princess, Damien teased. Now I feel like a main character now. It was a tale Aurora shared with him. A story about a girl who was forced out of her own kingdom, her family killed and betrayed by their very own minister. Aurora looked at the tall pirate who had vastly broadened her horizons over the past 3 weeks. I won't forget our deal, she said with a resolute tone. This is an assurance. Damien examined the purple-haired bounty hunter. He then looked down to see her open palm holding a thin piece of plain paper. Yet every moment, the paper would inch toward the girl like a magnet. Your Vivre card, Damien smirked. It's akin to putting a tracker on yourself for anyone to hunt you down. Yet his words failed to invoke anything more than a determined gaze from the girl. Pocketing the paper, he nodded. Good luck, try not to die, otherwise, it'll cause some troubles for my plans. Damien left the cave, waving backwards to the girl. Aurora looked at the slowly shrinking figure, her gaze inexplicable. Did she sell her soul to the devil for her revenge? She balled her fists, throwing away loose thoughts. Her time with Damien taught her some patience. To bide her time and train in the powers of hockey, for the first time in her life, the path ahead was no longer covered in darkness. Rays of hope lightened the way. Such hope could either make or break a desperate person. By the edge of Fishman Island. Damn it. Boom. A huge explosion echoed through the coral grounds as a black club hammered down. Blasts of powerful thuds rippled through the terrain as a giant pirate rained down attacks on a smaller one. Damien, you bastard. Why is your bounty higher than mine all of a sudden? Kaido was throwing a fit of rage as he began to pummel the recently arrived Damien. The latter was dodging all attacks with his smaller and quicker stature. What's wrong, Kaido? You can't even land a single hit. No wonder there's an 80 million gap between our bounties. Damien fashioned a grin as he shaved through the air, further enraging the beast. Reimei Hake. Fury Road. The purple lightning and crimson energy exploded all over the nearby land as waves of shock spread forth. Cracks formed all over the soil beneath as dust and debris soon remained. Bang, bang. 2 pitch black bullets fired at the clashing pirates as the air whizzed in their wake. Damien and Kaido's eyes shone in observation as the two instantly recoiled by instinct. That's enough, the ship was finally fixed and you're already trying to break it apart. The annoyed voice came from the unassuming woman with the pistol in her hands. It was naturally Shaki. TCH, Kaido couldn't unload his irritation anywhere so he simply went to the ship and fell asleep. Another towering pirate soon arrived on the scene. If you want to fight, I'm sure you'll get that chance soon, Whitebeard casually said. Damien narrowed his eyes. The new world, the unconquered sea with endless monsters awaiting. I'm finally there. Shaki nodded at her companions, and began the ascending protocol to sail up to the new world. A few hours later, traversing through the dark sea took a while, though the ship was repaired to sail. Its structural integrity was long lost, and its expiry date was coming soon. Damien soon saw the ocean end as the ship emerged from the depths. Rumble. The storm alongside the constant thunder was awfully conspicuous. The rain poured incessantly, while it was snowing in the far east, and hailing further south. Tempestuous currents carried the ship while the sails creaked in response. The weather was not the main attraction. Purup. Whitebeard's right hand soon pulsed with a blue orb as the air inside was long ravaged. Click. Shaki's pistol cocked in a bullet and she let out a cloud of smoke. Thunk. Kaido slammed his mace on the deck of the ship with a wide grin. Shiz. Crimson energy sizzled out from Damien's hand, ready to fight. A loud voice resounded from the chaotic seas. You bastards are finally out. I was running out of rice crackers waiting for you. Another voice soon followed. Garp, this is not the time for your nonsense. These pirates must die here before they can reach Hachinosu. The conversation took place at the core of the welcoming party. 10 large marine warships, bred for battle. Damien's sharp eyes zoomed in on the two figures standing on side-by-side ships. Their mighty frames cast a wide net of relief to the thousands of marines, leaving them in high spirits. It was a force beyond even a buster call. 10 warships headed by 10 vice admirals. Shaki blew out some more smoke as she casually said. All under the command of Vice Admiral Garp and Admiral Basara. Damien smirked in response, his crimson eyes reflecting the upcoming battle. Quite the welcome to this hellish sea. To be continued. Author's Corner. That draws an end to the mass release of 20 chapters. Hopefully, they were of decent quality. Thanks for getting all the way up here, and now you wait. Images. https://discord.gg/adishboob6q. Chapter 21. The Power of Whitebeard. Published by Ranobes. One Piece. Path to Power. 2,850 words. For reference, 50 meters equals 8 walls. Bawahaha, Basara-san, it's your time to shine. Garp was as lax as ever. He stood on his dog-headed ship while looking towards the bare-headed one. The man he spoke to, however, was not amused. He stood around 10 feet tall, approximately 3 meters, with short black hair. The marine wore brown navy attire with a white coat draped over his shoulders, a powerful air surrounding him. He was perhaps in his late 30s. The scowl on his face was rather unsettling as he turned his gaze to the surrounded pirate ship. Thunk. 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 Heavy footsteps echoed through the thick wooden deck of the marine warship. The nearby marines revered the admiral as he slowly raised his hands as if accepting a prayer. Pit of despair. A silent yet foreboding moment passed. Rumble. The entire sea began to quiver, growing from a subtle trembling to a distinct rumbling which was growing in intensity. Even the pirates nearly half a kilometer away felt the shaking as huge volumes of water began to displace. Splash. Towering bursts of seawater shot into the sky, eclipsing the navy warships and unveiling something far more terrifying. Ginormous walls of pure earth, brown in color, rose out from the ground in a uniform, circular shape. They were 10 meters thick as they extended further and further into the sky. Rumble. The shaking continued for a few seconds, far outshadowing the disastrous weather. Soon enough, the walls reached their maximum height of 830 meters and entirely encased the battlefield in a circular ring made of thick earth. 830 meters equals tilde half a mile equals Burj Khalifa. The sight of the encircling walls nearly 5 kilometers, 3.1 mi, from the center alone cast a shadow that would put the fear of death into the souls of most, simultaneously raising marine morale. Shaki sighed at the sight. The mountain fruit, a paramecia-type devil fruit with the ability to erect mountains wherever the user pleases. Image of Basara the mountain, in Discord. Damien took a deep breath as he witnessed the power. He can even pull earth from below the ocean? The woman nodded. Basara's control over anything mountainous is deeper than the water here, so he can do as he pleases. The young pirate narrowed his eyes, glancing at the barriers. Even though the admirals outside of Sengoku were forgotten and never mentioned, it would make sense for them to be monsters to be the powerhouses of the rocks era. Meanwhile, Whitebeard focused elsewhere. Basara playing with his rocks as always, but this weather is also a little too depressing, he muttered. The man's eyes were locked onto the hellacious climate that had graced them. Snow, sleet, rain, snow, lightning and howling winds. Suddenly Newgate coiled his hand to the side, the familiar earthquake bubble pulsing like a heart. A single swing onto the area above. Boom. The atmosphere around the fist was spreading with fern-like cracks, resembling glass. They continued their advent, stretching and branching off to the point where nearly 100 meters of the sky was left cracked. Shatter. In a cacophony of crashes, the very air exploded into giant transparent shards, unleashing a powerful blast of white shockwave energy that reached the clouds. Gulp. The marines who were high on the admiral hype were brought back to reality as they saw the astonishing act. Vivu. The entire storm and thunderous welcome were utterly and completely shattered. Bright and warm rays of sunlight soon bathed the entire canyon, gracing its prisoners with better weather compared to the outer seas. Such a sight was as incredible as the walls being erected, yet Basara remained motionless. Garp, not so much. Bawahaha, get ready, you guys, he roared to the other vice admirals. Though they were of the same rank, it seemed as if they either respected Garp enough or were simply numb to his insolent behavior. Woo. Whitebeard twirled his weapon, feeling the tense air spread across the pit. The ship is already on its last life, keep the battle away from it, he warned. Thud. The wooden deck shook as the 20-plus foot tall pirate lunged forward with a single jump. His body arched through the sky as he crossed the sea. Purup. Whilst in the air, Newgate wrapped his weapon in a white bubble that pulsated in impatience. Ha! The pirate grunted as he swiped the weapon across the sky, directing it onto the marine formation. A silver tear cut through the atmosphere, giving birth to a shockwave that raged out to the 5 warships in its way. Foo. The air screeched from the incoming hell, giving way for the attack to meet its target. Boom! The entire marine formation shook, though the 3 warships at the front bore the brunt of the damage. Thick chasms opened up through the ship that was the size of ancient giants, forcing the marines on board into a grave panic. The seas underneath grew chaotic and rampaging, summoning giant tidal waves that enveloped the warships. Ah! Hang on. You. Basara stood tall under the raging winds, annoyed by the turn of events. Don't act so pathetically, he told the soldiers screaming at the 5 sinking warships. He then raised his right hand. Rumble. The seas shook once more as huge, blunt spikes of earth shot from the seafloor and pushed the collapsing ships up and out from the water, saving them from sinking. 3 crumbling ships were easily salvaged without significant casualties. Yet the true threat, Whitebeard, was still mobile. Garp, hold him down. The order went out as a silver figure dashed through the sky and rocketed on ahead like a comet. Boom. A huge explosion rang through the sky, originating from a hockey-clad fist meeting a giant glaive. Let's go too, Kaido. 2 bursts of air boomed as the young duo of pirates dove onto opposite sides. While Whitebeard went down the middle, holding down 3 marine warships and the 2 unique battleships himself, the other available ships began to move in. Pop. Damien moonwalked through the air as he found himself landing on a warship. Thud. The Sin Incarnate's black boots made contact with the enemy ships, all the while alerting the near 1,000 marines on board. A grin etched on his face. Take down the pirate. For justice. Fire. Damien eyed the masses. A sharp red glint passed through his eyes. The rambunctious marines soon paused as dark red waves of pulsating energy emanated from the young pirate. The overwhelming weight and despair overtook many of the marines as their eyes darkened and rolled back into their sockets. Thud. Thunk. Asterisk pluck. Tens, hundreds, and thousands of bodies soon fell to the ground, taking victims from not only the immediate ship but all 3 other nearby ones. That was Conqueror's Haki. The Marines on Damien's side of the battlefield, though thinned out, still had a few thousand standing. Whiz, 2 shadows shot forth towards Damien. We must take him down before he reaches the pirate island. Damien saw the coming shadows and raised a hand that released some ominous red particles. Utter ruin. The crimson energy bubbled into a crimson circle as it exploded forth. A huge current, nearly 10 meters in diameter, shredded apart everything in its wake, drilling through a huge chunk of area. The incoming rear admiral duo was encompassed wholly in the energy. They couldn't even finish their wails before all that remained was a cloud of blood. Splatter. The crimson liquid dyed the wooden floor with a fresh paint of red, eerily reflecting the imminent fate of the others. Damien wasted no time and tapped on the ship. Shatter. The crimson energy spread out and began to encase the entire ship, reaching a good 10 meters every passing second, slowly but surely endangering the hundreds of Marines on board. A nearby vice admiral felt an ominous feeling. Abandoned ship. Creak. Boom. A few lucky Marines near the edge were able to jump out, however, the others were not as lucky. The deck under them crumbled to dust as they fell from the height into the bottom of the ship. Damien was about to jump to another ship and yet a shadow appeared behind him. Iron body. Slam. The opponent's arm thickened as he slammed his fist onto the unsuspecting Damien. Yet the result wasn't what he expected. Clang. Damien's blackened fist clashed with the enemy Marine's fist, sending out a burst of shock. The Navy officer saw the smirk on his opponent, hearing a few passing words, "Don't you know iron body locks you in place?" Within a split second, Damien's finger wrapped with a current of air drilled into the man's shoulder, exploding his rotator cuff. A loud groan rang as the Marine yelped in pain. His right arm was no longer functioning from the torn shoulder, sending out copious amounts of blood. The officer forgot his pain as saw the enemy pirate jump onto another warship. Whiz. He soon reappeared onto another warship utilizing Shave of the Rokushiki, grasping his right shoulder. Vice Admiral Hux. The Marine saluted. "Be ready, that pirate is aiming at our ships," Hux warned, tying a cloth over his deltoid. An ominous silence arrived as a dark figure appeared in front of the Marine, utilizing a familiar technique. How did a pirate get a hold of the Rokushiki? Hux questioned in surprise as realized Damien had used 3 of the 6 styles already. Click. Cock. Clank. Not only dozens of rifles and pistols but also cannons locked on the invader. Damien gave a small grin as he began to release his power. Hux saw the pirate smirk as his Haki began to flare. No. Desolation Zone. A powerful and crushing power soon exploded from the young pirate like a volcano. It stemmed from his heart that had gathered a large clump of pulverizing energy. It spread out in mere moments, encapsulating everything nearby in a complete circle, stretching out over the majority of the warship. Asterisk Vivu. The air within the zone began to bubble and churn as the crushing energy rained down like red raindrops, leaving hell behind for anyone in its way. The men, the weapons, and the deck began to crumple and shred from being compressed and crippled. Damien walked on under the carnage, the circular zone moved alongside him. The soldiers closer to the center, in other words, closer to Damien, had long become nothing more than droplets of blood and bits of bone. The bright sunny sky was completely dulled away, replaced with a crimson cloud. The grinding energy soon dissipated, leaving a sole Damien at the very center of the ship. Going from a mix of yellings, groans and grunts to complete silence was truly deafening. Creak. The sails were long gone, just some simple framework remained as it touched the seawater that dispersed his attack. Whiz. Damien's eyes widened as he felt the movement of air behind him. It was the bloodied up Hux. Bang. A dull boom went off from hundreds of meters away, echoing past the turbulent seas. Ow. Damien saw the Vice Admiral's eyes lose their luster, and a small hole appeared through his head. The Marine fell into a pool of blood with a loud thud. Damien's eyes drifted to the far side and locked onto the figure of a woman with a pistol, blowing the smoke. Feeling his gaze, the woman gave a wink in return. However, it seemed something had clicked in her mind as she proceeded to mouth out an order. Clear the path for the ship to sail to the walls. That said, Shaki returned to unloading endless mags of bullets at distant Marines. Bang bang bang. One hand holding the cigar, one hand pulling the trigger. Damien no longer waited and jumped into the sky with his moonwalk and raised a hand. Utter ruin. The stream of ravaging red energy once again blazed out and enveloped the ship in its backside where the rudder was located. Not only was the back half left in dust but the entire navigation of the warship was gone, leaving it impossible to be salvaged. Damn pirates. The voice was that of the admiral himself. Basara stood at the bow of his ship as he saw the mission begin to fall apart. Garp was busy holding down the powerful new gate aboard a wrecked warship, sending seismic torrents from the core of their clash. This forced 7 vice admirals to jump from ship to ship, clearing up the tsunamis and shockwaves to protect their troops. It seemed that a naval battle against a man of quakes was not the best idea. Whitebeard also saw the battle turn in his favor, yet something was afoot, credit to his alarmed Haki. Boom. The air suddenly exploded as a giant tentacle-like structure made of pure earth shot out from the seafloor toward Whitebeard. The attack began to morph into a hand that spanned a good 200 meters in width, 656 feet. In a simple and crude motion, the limb balled up into a fist, crushing Whitebeard in its palm. Asterisk FWWM. A pristine black color soon wrapped around the arm, wholly capturing the enemy pirate with dense Haki. Splash. More and more tendrils of earth continued being birthed from the seafloor, wrapping and crushing their lone prisoner. Within moments, Whitebeard was entirely covered in a giant mass of earth, resembling a small moon. Pebbles and debris floated down from the structure, leaving a silence behind. The nearby area was eclipsed by the ball, spreading its darkness to the edges of the walls. The admiral made a move. Garp landed on a shaken ship, narrowing his eyes on the locked-up pirate. Shiver. The hair on the vice admiral's arm stood up in instinct, alerting him to the coming chaos. Rumble. The short tranquility came to an end with a rumbling of the giant earth arm turned moon. Dull shakes broke out as increasingly larger bits of stone rained down. Boom. With a single beat, the colossus exploded into a rain of endless bits of earth, revealing the silhouette of the unhurt Whitebeard. Creak. Basara rose from his ship under an identical stone platform in the shape of a rising arm from under the sea. The admiral's own arm and half of his body were covered in thick rocks as he glared at the pirate. I won't let you harm my troops any further. Whitebeard returned a grin, then protect them. He then smashed both his hands towards opposite sides as the cracks spread through the atmosphere. Basara's mountainous defenses were against their greatest foe. Perhaps using the earth to stop a man of earthquakes was not overly efficient. A giant 200-meter-tall tsunami rose from up ahead and began to rage toward the main battalion of marine warships. Garp. Basara roared. Whoosh. The charismatic vice admiral shot in chase towards the giant wave, his metallic fist ready to pummel it. Boom. Dull explosions carried on near the other sides of the battlefield. Kaido had been on a rampage, destroying a couple of ships only to be stopped by a vice admiral. His size was working against him as he had trouble keeping up with the smaller and more agile master of Rokushiki. Only with the aid of Shaki was he able to take the marine down. I had him, Kaido roared out. Yet his roar was left on reed, angering him further. Boom. Clang. Bam. Once again, sending the 100 beast into a frenzy to unload hell upon unsuspecting marines. The clash of Whitebeard and Basara alongside the roaring seas holding down Garp gave way for the tired ship led by Shaki to reach its destination. Damien-chan, can you break open a large piece of that mountain? The woman asked in her usual playful tone. The pirate in question looked at the ring of earth trapping them in, spanning over 800 meters. Define, a large piece. Shaki puffed out some smoke and casually said, as big as possible. Damien nodded and jumped into the air and towards the mountain. Tap. His hand touched the earth. A sound of pixelation broke out as the dull brown wall began to turn red with a checkered pattern, spreading in all directions. Not long after, a giant piece of pure earth was dislodged from the wall. It was around a quarter as tall as the barrier, 10 meters deep and 100 meters across. Shaki smiled at the display, perfect tilde. She then aimed her beloved pistol at the mountain, much to Damien's confusion. His eyes zoomed in on the weapon as he saw the bullet to be fired change color. It went from the usual black to a gray hue, wrapped in some form of inconspicuous energy. Bang. The sin incarnate traced the bullet's trajectory as it nailed the separated mountain dead in its center. Poof. Damien's jaw almost fell at what followed. The mountain, where to go? Shaki winked and charmingly replied, to Marineford, of course tilde. To be continued. Author's Corner. Damien certainly is not yet strong enough to take the limelight from such a battle. Giving it to Whitebeard instead was fun to write up. Images. https://discord.gg/edishboob6q. Chapter 22. Forged in Fury. Published by Ranobes. One Piece. Path to Power. 2,680 words. I also have been going back to rectify the typos highlighted by others in the paragraph comments. I appreciate it. There is also a new channel in the Discord server specifically for typo and inconsistencies. Damien saw the giant piece of earth simply poof out of existence and disappear, leaving a giant gap in the wall. Shaki giggled as she saw Damien's surprised appearance. The mountain, where to go? The woman winked in reply, to Marineford, of course tilde. Shaki held up her trusty pistol, showing it off to her young friend. My gun ate the roulette fruit and can shoot 6 different types of bullets. She began listing them out, counting with her fingers. Piercing rounds that can rip through thick steel like butter. Incendiary rounds that burn upon impact. Explosive rounds that go boom boom. Medicinal rounds that can heal non-fatal injuries. Storage rounds that can create a little space to store things. And lastly, warping rounds that can teleport objects to a place I've left a marker behind. Damien gave a wry smile. Let me guess, you can combine them all as you please. Era tilde, you're giving away my secrets now. Both of the pirates halted in talk as another voice resounded the battlefield. Dreaded devastation. A giant cone-shaped column of earth shot forward at speeds faster than a normal human could react to. It shot towards the giant pirate as he smashed his fist to meet the attack. Crack. A crack broke through the air as the coming earth began to crumble away. You don't learn, do you, Basara? Whitebeard said with an annoyed sigh. The admiral gritted his teeth in impatience as he saw the results. His eyes were then drawn to the now open gap in his mountainous defense as the rock ship sailed ahead. A marine warship was about to commence bombardment but instead was pummeled by a flying figure that crashed upon it. Wororo, you're falling apart, Navy. Looks like you couldn't protect them. Newgate pointed his naginata towards the admiral and gave an ultimatum. You can either send Garp to take them down, but that would leave the other marines to sink from our fight. Or you let them go and we fight another day. Basara's face twisted with a scowl. Being threatened by a pirate in such a manner brought great shame to his position as an admiral. Yet it was also his position as an admiral that calmed him down. He pulled out a transponder snail, expressionlessly sending an order. All forces, stand down. Whitebeard gave a small grin as he shot forward to the pirate ship, leaving behind a disgruntled Basara. Garp, who was extinguishing the tsunami's left, right, and center also got the order. He saw the rock ship reach beyond the canyon and could only sigh. A battle at sea against a quake man is never easy. A nearby vice admiral began to instruct the marines, look after the wounded, the rest of you, rescue the ones who fell to sea before. No need. Basara raised his hands with an annoyed face. Rumble. The ground shook incessantly and under the eyes of the shaken marines was hope. A giant platform, equal to the size of the entire canyon, over a handful of kilometers in radius, rose from the depths. The men, the ships, and even the sea kings below were uplifted and placed on the hard earth, rescued from sinking into the depths. A single motion to birth a spanning landmass. Garp walked ahead and began directing, look after the wounded and collect the martyred, they deserve a funeral. Roger that. The vice admiral then ordered a rookie marine, go get me my rice crackers. Why yes sir. It seemed this little skirmish had come to an end. A while later, Damien rested at the edge of the ship. They had sailed beyond the ring of earth, leaving the marines behind. An admiral is quite the challenge. Whitebeard was devouring liters of sake as he heard the words. Gurara, that Basara is like a mad dog but he has enough sense not to gamble too many marines just for us. Especially considering the state of the new world now, Shaki added. Damien's ears perked at her words and he asked, can you give me some more details on that? The woman hummed in response and began the info dump. Well, quite a few big names are roaming the seas. The government ranks each with their world threat index. It outlines a pirate's threat level from 1 to 5, she said. There are quite a few in the highest level, but 3 of them take the cake. The overlords of the seas, Damien said from his past knowledge on the subject. Shaki nodded, nowadays people are claiming a 4th, being Captain Rocks, but the Rocks pirates aren't all that centralized like the overlords. The boss is on the pirate island of Hachinosu, fully lead, beehive, with a pack of rabid dogs, but they aren't the type to go around conquering lands, rather, they prefer to loot, kill and destroy everything in their path. Whitebeard grumbled at her words, not disagreeing with them but not liking the reality either. The government's hands are full with all these bad names and things are getting even more hectic. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to take down an overlord or two to calm the seas a little. Are we headed to Hachinosu to build a ship then? Damien asked. Shaki shook her head, we're going to Naufragium Island. Puff. A cloud of smoke swarmed out from her mouth as she continued. A man reached out to Captain Rocks a few months ago, saying he would fulfill his wish to make a behemoth of a ship if we could gather the proper materials. Damien raised an eye at the news, is he credible enough? Shaki nodded, Naufragium Island was once called the Haven of Shipwrights. Was? A look of pity appeared on the woman's face as she explained. It was reduced to rubble in an unknown siege that took place under the cover of night a couple of decades ago. Most of the shipwrights either died or fled to paradise. I hear many were recruited to WATER-7. She gave out a small sigh. One man still remains there. He's the one who called the captain. His name is Quentin Hammer. 4 days later. Fleet Admiral's office, Marineford. 7 people were seated upon a wide, round table. Each had a marine uniform, 6 men and 1 woman. The room was white with blue accents. Each side had an open window aside from the entrance. *FWOO tilde * a cool breeze of fresh air entered the room while the marines sat in solemn silence. Garp, Basara, a deep voice bellowed. One of you better tell me why there was a damn mountain in my office. Naturally, the one who spoke was Fleet Admiral Kong. The admiral in question sat in silence. The other man, however, wasn't in the same dull mood. Bawahaha, a boisterous laugh broke apart the seriousness. Kong-san, don't get so angry. These things happen now and then. Garp was munching on his favorite rice crackers as he, rather rudely, devoured the snacks amongst such prestigious marines. A vein popped in Kong's forehead, almost as if it was about to burst. Garp, show some respect to the Fleet Admiral. The man voicing his annoyance was Garp's good friend, Sengoku. These rocks pirates are getting far out of hand. It was a different voice, one calmer and softer than Sengoku's. It came from a muscular man wearing sharp marine attire, short purple hair alongside a heroic posture. Vice Admiral Zephyr. Image of Zephyr, in Discord. What is your input, Suru? The Fleet Admiral looked at the woman to his side. She was a beautiful woman with turquoise hair tied in a ponytail. She held the title of Vice Admiral yet she was known not for skills as a fighter, but her brains as a tactician. Images of Suru, in Discord. The woman squinted her eyes. We have tried to hide their emergence, but it's getting more and more difficult. Many reverie attendants have shared their impatience with our handling of the situation. She gave out a slight sigh. The overlords have already kept our forces stretched, and now the rocks have grown stronger with the addition of the 2 demonic rookies. Flutter. Suru placed 2 bounty posters on the table. With the big names already under Rock's flag, I'm afraid only the crew's terrible camaraderie can slow them down. At this rate, they will amass a force that can rival the world itself. Kong exhaled while tapping his finger on the table. Sengoku then chimed in, with the intel from CP1 about the Black Death gathering materials to build a ship. We can infer their next moves. Zephyr looked to the side of the Grand Line map and zoomed in on a single island. The island of shipwrights that was left in the dust. That's their goal, he chimed in. The intel brought a silent man to speak up. Send me, I'll go and destroy that island once and for all, Basara declared. Kong looked at the brown-clothed admiral and shook his head. I need you and Sengoku on standby. It seems Borealis is making a move. He then glanced at Zephyr and took something out of his pocket. It was a transponder snail, bright gold in color. Kong gave it to Zephyr. You know what to do. The purple-haired vice admiral just sank into his seat without a reply, pocketing the device. Suru saw the expression and ignored it. It seems we need to review the bounties of the rocks, especially that of the demon rookies duo. The New World, the ruins of Naufragium Island. The constantly repaired rock ships eventually docked onto the Naufragium Island. The 4 pirates stepped off and glanced at the island. Reduced to rubble was an accurate description, Damien muttered. The tiny island was quite ruined. Nothing but cracked earth and broken land. The trees were long dead, and the grass receded, leaving behind a barren land. It was quite obvious that a flourishing population once existed here by the site of the ruined and revenge buildings and homes. The overgrown moss and vines were the only colors left in this place. The nature here is void of color and life, Damien thought as he felt the silence of the voice of all living things. Looks like the tavern has some life, Whitebeard said, though he was already walking towards it from the start. Kaido joined in as the 2 went into the pub. Shaki poked Damien in the ribs. Don't even think of bailing on me, you're coming with me to find this hammer fellow. She dragged the rookie pirate towards the ruined town for the shipmaker in question. A while later. This should be it, Shaki announced. The 2 were standing before a broken down house with pieces of the walls missing. A small well and ruined fences nearby. At least the grass here has some life, Damien said. Image of the house, in Discord. The pirate duo walked ahead and towards the door. Creak. Damien had locked onto the man's presence for a while now. He was seated on a barrel by the front yard, gazing at the sky. With a size of around 12 feet, 3.66 meters, a burly figure with muscles. Damien asked. Are you Quentin Hammer? The man looked down with a stern expression. Depends who's asking. We're asking. Who's we? Depends who's asking. I'm asking. Who are you? Depends who's asking. We're asking. Who's we? Depends who's asking. Shaki broke the loop with a single word, rocks. The man narrowed his eyes on the pirates, taking a strong puff of his cigar. You got the right guy. Damien shrugged at Shaki. He would have given in soon either way. The woman rolled her eyes and then glanced at the man. The dark-skinned man had a wild look, overgrown beard and hair that linked together to give a rather feral look. His forehead was popping with veins from madness. He breathed out clouds of smoke through his nose, reveling in the cigar's taste. He's missing a few screws. Image of Quentin Hammer, in Discord. You got the stuff? Shaki eyed the man's crazed eyes and slowly nodded. Bang bang bang. Her pistol fired as a small thrice a triangular portal-like construct appeared in the ground. Plop. Soon, a handful of giant logs of thick wood shot out, alongside a rain of crimson ore, separated into large blocks and set in neat rows. Hammer slowly walked ahead and eyed the goods. Adam's oak, nice stuff. His eyes then locked on the blood-red ore. This is. Gulp. An unconscious reflex from the shipbuilder resounded as he touched the ore with his blistered and scarred hands. The previous weariness was instantly replaced with delight. Oh, it's beautiful. Shaki saw the man grab the ore as if it could grow legs and run away from him and rolled her eyes. Ahem, she audibly cleared her throat, drawing the man's attention. Can you make do with this? I don't want to come all the way here on a man's delusion. Hammer looked at the woman and squinted his eyes. Hama hama hama, he broke out in a laugh. You're not wrong to call it my delusion, but that was before the tragedy of this island. Hammer shook his head and elaborated. You see, I was once a young lad with dreams to make a ship that would conquer the seas. The man's crazed eyes soon grew melancholy in nostalgia. But it fell apart. I couldn't make the final leap to conquer this chaotic sea. I grew old and tired, so I departed all my knowledge to the new generation, my son who I picked up from the sea. We father and son were happy. Hammer's eyes returned to their frenzy state, almost glowing red in anger. But they came, the celestial dragons. They wanted a ship fit for a god. Boom. Hammer's fist crashed onto the ground, enough to draw blood. I rejected them and directed them elsewhere, but they didn't even hear me out. Those bubbled-headed scum, they ordered the dogs of Cypher Pole to take my 7-year kid as a slave and drag him away. Fury flashed by Hammer's face as he spat out. My punishment was what followed. They set an island bounty. The next morning everything was in ruins. My entire life's work was ripped apart over a single night. The giant man fell to his knees in a moment of weakness. My hate for them has built up for decades. I'm old now, my son is probably long dead, and now I only have one purpose. I want to see the world government burn. The manic expression mixed with the maddened eyes left Hammer a broken man, yet his words carried an air of determination. Damien heard the soliloquy and felt a hint of pity. Shaki continued to smoke while questioning. You want to bet that Captain Rocks will fulfill your purpose? Hammer looked up and nodded. Yes, if I have to make a deal with the devil then so be it. I will do what he wants. I'll make him a titan of a ship to conquer these seas and bring hell to the world nobles. Damien still had some doubt. You couldn't make it then, how can you make it now? Hammer stood up. His eyes now shining bright and lost hope and maniacal. A pulse of pressure soon rippled out of the broken man in gray-colored waves. The mad shipwright balled his fist so hard that it began to draw blood. An insane grin spread across his face, because now I can put my life on the line for it. Damien and Shaki both felt the booming presence of the shipbuilder who had fallen from grace. A few crows on the nearby dead trees had fallen to the ground, unconscious. Shaki eventually nodded. Very well then. To be continued. Author's Corner. Bit of world building with the World Threat Index and the state of the new world. We like to see it. Images. https://discord.gg/edishboob6q. Chapter 23. Birth of a Titan. Published by Ranobes. One Piece. Path to Power. 2,520 words. Hockey leveling and power leveling chapters are out in the auxiliary volume detailing their respective fields. Note, they are different from the original story. For example, it no longer goes low mid high top but simply bottom middle top for Yonko commanders and Yonko. Also, as clarification, any stats shown with do not mean that Damien just got them. It simply shows any upgrades since the last time the stats panel was shown. A week later, pirates catch a marine patrol fleet by surprise, thousands dead. Damien rolled his eyes at the headlines and skimmed through the report. The name of the Rocks pirates was once again not mentioned, rather it was more focused on the marine genocide headed by the 4 evil pirates. Wanted. Less than Kaido greater than. Less than 100 Beast greater than. Less than B350 million greater than. Less than dead or alive greater than. Wanted. Less than I.Operator D.Operator Damien greater than. Less than Sin Incarnate greater than. Less than B420 million greater than. Less than dead or alive greater than. Wanted. Less than Shikiyaku greater than. Less than Black Death greater than. Less than B 700 million greater than. Less than dead or alive greater than. Wanted. Less than Edward. Operator Newgate greater than. Less than Whitebeard greater than. Less than B 1,846 million greater than. Less than dead or alive greater than. Nearly 2 billion on Whitebeard. The number is probably lower due to his neutral nature, at least compared to the others in the Rocks Pirates, Damien surmised. But this news cover-up is a little too blatant, not even mentioning the presence of an admiral, rather annoying. Damien's eyes soon shone with a different light, a curious one. Come to me. The voice echoed through the comseas as Damien sat at the edge of the worn-down island. Squawk. Chirp. Asterisk creak creet. One by one, tens, hundreds, thousands of birds and other flying mammals descended, flying around the young pirate in a tornado of multiple colors. Some sat on his shoulders, some on his head, while the others chirped in a musical spectacle. Spread out through the Grand Line and look for the headquarters of the World News Agency. Squawk. Chirp. Asterisk creak creet. The birds sang in agreement as they burst out in every direction, some heading further into the New World while many back towards the Red Line. Operation Nexus. Find the World News Agency main base. Find replacement president. Bring the replacement under control. Have the agency exit the world government's grasp. Time limit 1486. The first goal was to find the HQ of the news agency. As for finding a replacement head for him to control, that may take some time. There are some news-focused islands I read about. I'll have to pay a visit there and see if I can find someone worthy, Damien thought. He then gazed up at the sun. It was noon, also the time for when the ship was to be completed. Damien saw some familiar faces as he arrived at the old man's decrepit house. He had used the port by his home to build the ship's frame and drop it into the shallow water to finish construction. As of now, there was a ginormous ship that eclipsed over the entire area, dozens of meters tall. It was covered with a dull brown cloth that for some reason came in such absurd sizes. Perhaps shipwrights had a thing for carrying ship-sized cloths around. The crazy thing was that Hammer had built the entire ship alone, 7 days to build his best creation. He looks like he hasn't slept since we handed him the materials, Damien said as he stood side by side with the 3 other pirates. Shacky sighed. That's because he hasn't. What a crazy guy. Hammer's eyes were bright red and his eye bags had bags. The man's face was slicked in sweat yet his droopy eyes shone bright. Hama hama hama, she's ready, I've done it, he roared. He then yeeted the entire cloth off with a single motion, revealing the beauty hidden under the veil. Whitebeard stepped up and saw the encased ship. It's almost twice as big as a marine battleship. Shacky nodded with some surprise. The ship was more magnificent than she imagined. Damien also heard the comparison and could confirm. A marine battleship is around the size of an ancient giant such as Little Wars Jr. That is, around 60 meters tall, approximately 200 feet. This ship was a little under twice as large, at around 100 meters in height, 328 feet. A.N. For the Americans, 100 meters is equivalent to the Statue of Liberty with Kaido standing on top of it. The mighty vessel had 2 main masts, with 2 to 3 sails each. The front of the ship had a W-shaped frame with a giant skull at the helm. A large structure sat at the center back of the ship, capable of housing thousands of men. The main decoration of the golden frame ship was the lowest sail at the front. It was black in color, unlike the other white ones. It read a single word in large font, ROCKS. With a red, flaming skull in place of the O. Image of the ship, in Discord. Kaido also raised an eyebrow at the ship created with the grandiose materials. Hammer cleared his throat and began to introduce the vessel. The ship's frame is naturally made of the Adam's oak, tough and strong enough to hold up a mountain. He continued, I lined the entire ship with a thin sheet of the eternal ore. This should allow any small point of force to be equally distributed to the entire ship, leaving absolutely no weak points. It is solid enough to conquer this turbulent sea. Hammer's eyes shone with tears. The ship is my finest creation. The man fell to his knees due to both fatigue and joy. I did it, my son, I did it. Does it have a name? Damien asked the weeping man. Hammer looked up and slowly shook his head. This prompted the pirates to give their thoughts. Shacky, Mighty Ship Chan. Kaido, World Killer. Whitebeard, Shamu. Hammer froze for a second, though he didn't want to interfere with the naming ceremony. He still felt that his creation deserved a fitting name. Damien sighed at his fellow companion's naming sense. He tapped his chin with some thought and concluded, since it's a vessel born to be a titan amongst ships, why don't we go with the Titanic? The pirates slowly nodded their heads in unison. The Titanic, Hammer reiterated with a dazed expression. Yes, that speaks to me. The Titanic is born. Shacky saw the satisfied Hammer and could only break the joyful moment. Hammer, you should know what is to come once we set sail this ship. The words caused the shipbuilder to reply with a small chuckle. Hama hama hama, I have long accepted my fate from creating this ship, I regret nothing. He stood up with resolve, I can die fulfilled. Shacky nodded at his words and walked into the ship to familiarize herself with the steering. Whitebeard and Kaido went to bring the supplies to the ship, leaving Hammer and Damien behind. Damien lad, I have a favor to ask of you. The pirate in question looked up at the towering Hammer and saw signs of lost hope. My son, Quentin Craft, if you ever meet him in some miracle, can you just tell him that his pops did it? He built a ship that can carry the world. Damien saw the burning gaze of the shipbuilder. The flame that was suppressed into a lost spark over decades of pain rekindled once again. You have my word, Damien agreed. The old man gave a short sigh of relief, his body swallowed by fatigue as he fell to his knees once more. The desperate grip on life to die without regret had finally amounted to something. Don't worry, I'll make sure the world knows of your craft. Damien then walked up the ramp and into the ship's quarters, leaving the lone shipbuilder. Hammer remained seated, watching the Virgin Titanic set sail for the first time. Many hours passed, the Titanic was long gone, the sun had set and night had arrived. Hammer remained seated by the edge of the island, smoking a cigar. A satisfied and content look on his face. Asterisk Vivu. An ominous breeze whistled past the weathered shipbuilder, sending a chill down his spine. A long line of warships on the far horizon, 10 of them. They came like a wave of destruction, extinguishing any hopes of survival. The bright lamps hung from the battalion of battleships lit up the dark seas, creating a disastrous sight. A powerful and indomitable aura surrounding their arrival. Thud. A dark shadow fell behind the seated shipbuilder. A marine, purple hair, muscular build, powerful. Hammer didn't even flinch as he softly spoke up. Zephyr, been a while. The vice admiral gave a short sigh and stood behind the man. Hammer, it seems you've made your choice. The shipbuilder gazed at the marine. You came all the way here to lecture me? Zephyr shut his eyes. I was the one in charge of escorting the celestial dragons who did this to your island. I shouldn't have let it happen. Hammer broke out into a laugh. Hama hama hama. Zephyr, you're a good guy amongst the top dogs of the Marines. You helped many of our residents out before the bounty hunters arrived. You don't owe me anything. The marine shook his head slightly with an inexplicable expression and took out a transponder snail. Hammer saw the device and paid it no mind. Zephyr, can you at least tell if he's still alive? The purple-haired marine glanced at the longing expression on the lone shipbuilder and slowly nodded. Hammer just smirked and returned his gaze to the battalion of ships, almost as if welcoming the cold embrace of death. Was that ship worth it? Zephyr asked. The old shipbuilder gave out a crazed grin. That ship will be the spark that will light the fire that will burn the world government down. Farewell, Hammer. Zephyr soon jumped into the sky and landed at the leading warship. He put the golden snail before himself. Its brilliance was quite the contrast to the hell it wrought. Darkness had entirely hidden Zephyr's face as he gave a single order in a robotic voice, commence the buster call. A day later. The news is out. Now Phragium Island was destroyed by pirates and will be removed from any future maps henceforth. Shacky broke the news while bringing out lunch. The pirates were in the main hall of the Titanic. Whitebeard didn't pay it much mind. After all, Hammer was content with this fate and it would be dishonorable to pity him. Damien leaned his head back, staring at the ceiling. A buster call, a single order that will decide an island's fate within moments. He then resumed eating the copious amounts of food laid on the table. Shaki also sat down on the rather new and shiny chair. They too were made of Adam's oak. We will arrive at Hachinosu in 3 days, she stated. Kaido, who was busy devouring meat like a vacuum, seemed excited. I wonder if the captain will declare war right away. War, I can't wait. Whitebeard took a mouthful of meat and sake, rolling his eyes at the battle-crazy ogre. 4 days later, Damien now stood at the front deck of the Titanic. The towering Whitebeard was also present. The man slurped down his sake as Damien spoke up. Tell me more about the crew, Newgate-san. Gurup. That bastard golden lion Shiki who's always flying around like an annoying fly, throwing islands down, the pirate began. The crazy woman Linlin is always going off about eating while popping out a dozen broths. The wily, two-faced fox Captain John, always scrounging for treasure and looting every village and island in his path. Nothing more than a collection of scum standing under each of them in their ships. He took another heavy sip of his drink. As for Captain Rox, let's just say he's a monster amongst monsters. Newgate sighed at the memory of Zebek who came to mind. Rox rules through fear and absolute strength, even with the other bad names under his flag, most of which are conquerors hockey users. The fear he spreads has led practically everyone to call him by his surname, rather than as Zebek. Gurarara, a crazy guy. Whitebeard soon finished his sake and gave out a sigh. Only breath of fresh air is from leaving that vile island. This is the most enjoyable journey I've had in a while. The two then looked at the horizon and saw an island. It had a giant skull-shaped mountain at its core, also called the Pirate Paradise of Hachinosu. The name translated to beehive and explained the bee-like nature of the landmass. A single enemy ship and the pirates on the land would rush out like bees to obliterate them. Image of Hachinosu, in Discord. We're here, get ready. Rox will probably want to meet you, Whitebeard announced as he walked back onto the ship. Hachinosu, New World. The island reeked. A mix of blood, alcohol, sex, trash, and smoke. A few corpses lined up through the streets of the pirate island, some fresh, some old. Small fights and skirmishes broke out here and there as more and more pirates fell. Some lost limbs, some their lives. It was every man for himself. As long as there wasn't a riot, the top dogs could care less. What did you say about my mother? The burly pirate was smashing the face of another Rox pirate with a shovel, a disfigured body left behind. He kept pounding the corpse, the blood pooling out and splashing onto the killer's face. Boom. A fire suddenly blazed on the opposite side of the street. A group of pirates grinned and laughed musically as they tossed flaming bottles of Molotov cocktails. They reveled in the screams that followed. Move along, Rots, it's just a little flame. This voice belonged to a tall and lanky pirate as he pulled on a chain. It was linked to the necks of 6 fearful children, yanking them like slaves. Suffice to say, this was a place for the absolute worst of the worst the world could offer. Even as a fellow crewmate, your fate was unknown. A friend of one day may become your killer. The newer pirates had to sleep with one eye open. It was the den of scum, Hachinosu. Oye, there's a ship coming, Tilda. A drunk voice bellowed near the terribly managed port. The island was naturally surrounded by dozens of pirate ships. An enemy coming here would be met with a hail of firepower. Stand down, the ship has our flag. Even better, fire away. The crazy man was soon met with a blade and his head fell to the ground under a fountain of blood. Let them in. The nearby tens of pirates had a change in expression. Some with fear, some with praise, some with anger, some with excitement. What a gorgeous ship, is this what the Shaki Sama went to get? One of the division commanders went too, Whitebeard. And the latest news, it seems they also brought back some super rookie. It was that monstrous Kaido a year ago, now it's someone even worse. Great. I wonder what his blood tastes like. Alas, the newly born Titanic docked, dropping its anchors to the seafloor. The platform was soon connected by some fodders as the 4 pirates stepped off. Damien took in the gloomy and horrid atmosphere of the island. A small grin across his face. Time to meet the man who struck such fear in the government that they had to erase him from history. To be continued. Author's Corner. In the previous work, Rox also came and ran into Damien, stringing him along. They made the crew a little later, whereas here, it is more canon accurate with the group already standing by this time of year. Images, https://discord.gg/edishboob6q. Chapter 24, Ambition. Published by Ranobes. One Piece, Path to Power. 2,200 words. The crowd began to build up at the docks of Hachinosu. Pirates of various intentions stood and watched with intrigue. However, they did subconsciously clear the way for the newly arrived to walk through. Their boots dug into the soil that had turned red from being bathed in blood. A haze covered much of the island. Many eyes were glued onto the young Damien. Some gazed at him with curiosity, provocation, fear, intimidation, lust. The walk went quickly. The relaxed Whitebeard seemed to lead Damien towards Skull Rock. Kaido had already disappeared to a pub elsewhere. I was gone a few months and so many rats have flooded this place, Shaki commented as she felt the distant gazes of malintent. They won't last long anyways, Whitebeard offhandedly said. The 3 walked ahead, making their way through the sea of scum, eventually reaching the very front of the Skull Rock, the place where the captain resided. Good luck, Damien-chan, Shaki said while reaching up to pat his shoulder. Whitebeard nodded to him and went off to his own devices. The Sin Incarnate alone looked up at the mountain-sized structure where the big boss supposedly was to be found. Though the sky was bright and the wind was calm, Damien felt a tense environment build of the woe of the many, all concentrated in the structure before him. However, his attention was captured by a mob of pirates that had gathered. The fresh meat is here. They were mostly quips by the more battle-hardened veteran pirates. The ones who actually survived since perhaps the dawn of the Rox crew were not an easy feat. A large, burly man of 15 feet, 4.57 meters, in height walked up to the unmoving Damien. I heard a new monster rookie was brought in, he said in a condescending tone. You don't look all that tough to me. Damien gazed up at the larger, hairy pirate. Guess I need to prove myself before thinking of walking into the den of scum, Damien thought. He also felt a few other dozen pirates enclosing around him, not too obviously, but rather as if they were predators stalking their prey. A moment of weakness would send all of them at him like wild dogs. The pirate at the forefront seemed to take the moment of silence as a slap in the face, choosing to swing his equally large fist at the recruit. I got a bounty of 119 million on me, let me see what you got, rookie. His fist raged on under the combined gazes of hundreds of onlookers. Damien remained unmoved as the fist crashed upon his head. Crack. The sound of a broken bone was expected, just not from the one it originated from. The pirate who had attacked had a flash of pain swamped through his face. Ow, my arm, he cried out from the aching pain. The tall pirate glanced at his forearm bone that had torn through and out of his elbow and was sticking out, all the while his knuckle had severely deformed. Drip drop. The blood dribbled onto the dirt floor as the man fell to his knees in trepidation. Whoosh. Damien's hand quickly shot forth and grabbed the injured man by his broken arm. I won't go down so is. The vice-like grip of the rookie sent pulsating pain down the man's body, shutting him up and granting Damien the stage he needed to finish the act. With a quick show of force, he snapped the arm and drove a protruding elbow into the towering pirate's throat, lodging it through the carotid artery. Gurgle. Damien stared the man down as he fell into the cold grasp of death, suffocating on his own blood to arrive at his end. The tension nearby skyrocketed, followed by silence. Damien cast a glance nearby and saw the eyes of the onlookers. Some were fearful, many respectful, but quite a few others were grinning like crazed fiends. Step, step, step. The monster rookie paid no mind as he walked forward and into the gates of Skull Rock for his date with death. As expected, there were no more obstacles in his path. However, some distant gazes did lock onto his actions. Many were eagerly waiting for what condition Damien was going to exit in. Pitter-patter. The staircase leading to the very top of the structure was of a spiral kind. Droplets of black water and blood dripped occasionally, adding an eerie echo throughout the way up. The stench of various odors seemed to be trapped in the rotten wood and mossy stones. 5 minutes later, Damien was soon faced with a cracked signpost that hung above the wooden doors under the dull light that fell through a cracked window. It read 3 words written in dry blood by a lost soul: God ends here. The young pirate turned his attention away from the olden sign and onto the doors. There wasn't anything special about them, rather it was the eerie feeling that escaped from under the gap beneath them. Damien took a deep breath and walked in. Creak. Darkness. One couldn't even make out the dimensions of the room as the edges were all swamped in cold darkness. A heavy atmosphere of depression and despair was all that remained. A sliver of light from yet another cracked and aged window allowed Damien to make out a chair in the far back of the chamber. Image, in Discord. A man seated upon it, a barrel of aromatic sake in hand. The person wasn't that massive and seemed to be a little bit taller than Damien himself. He was slumped over his throne-like seat, watching the rookie pirate before him in deep intrigue. Damien felt the gaze, the fury-laden eyes shining through the blanket of darkness. The seat soon creaked due to age as the man slowly leaned forward, his head coming within view. He donned a dark coat draped over his shoulders. The man had darkish hair in an unruly mass, with locks sticking out unevenly behind his head, in every direction. A wild, scarred appearance with crazed eyes, a feral grin plastered to his face. Image, in Discord. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Damien took a masked breath as he felt the man's aura. His observation was flaring like an alarm, alerting him of a grievous threat. Zahahaha. It was a wild and manic laugh, one greatly amplified by the dark cavernous feel of the entire room. The hoarse voice came once again. You know of me, brat? Damien heard the interest in the tone of the man and replied with a firm voice. Rox D. Zebek, the man who wants to be the king of the world. The words evoked another manic laugh from Rox. Zahahaha. His wide grin stretched further as he gulped down a few more liters of his sake. Your ears seem very sharp, kid, he slowly stated. You can hear it, can't you? The words caused Damien's eyes to slightly widen, though he was just as quick to calm himself down. The sin incarnate was about to ask a question, but it seemed as if Rox had long predicted it. You can hear their voices, Zebek muttered. However, the pirate's voice soon turned venomous as he spat out. I can hear their screams. Boom. Zebek's eyes burst out with an overpowering momentum as it filled the edges of the rooms. The pressure seemed to reach far beyond Skull Rock as the skies above Hachinosu darkened into an abrupt storm. A thick, black bubble encapsulating the entire pirate paradise. Rain fell as the endless torrent of haki pressed upon the island itself. Cracks spread through the room as Damien felt the weight of the world pressing on his shoulders. He had felt conquerors' haki before, even from Whitebeard, but this was different. Rock's haki was not simply imposing one's dominance over the other, but quite literally attacking their mind and sanity, tearing it to shreds. Rumble. Black lightning crackled through the dark skies as the rain fell. The pirates below began to panic as many of them collapsed in moments, only leaving a few veterans standing. Shaki, who was in her zone, looked up at the tempestuous weather with worry. She knew what was to come, simply hoping things played out well for the bold young pirate. Crack. Damien, who bore the brunt of the haki, felt his knees creak and tremble under the bone-rattling weight. He once again heard the man's hoarse voice. Now what will you do? You may be a D, and even hear the voice of the world, but you need more than that to hold up in front of me, boy. The words echoed in Damien's mind as thoughts began to fall apart. A simple, unyielding spirit began to build up in his mind. His vision began to darken, his body overcome with the great and surmounting pressure. Can't fall now, I've just begun. The desperation that had been built up from the moment of Damien's first step in the path to power, from the time of his mother's death to the time he first set onto the sea. It began to fight back against Rock's unforgetting might. The unyielding spirit rushed out. Boom. Black lightning began to rain down as it tore apart the very room they clashed in. Rock's black haki was slowly forced back, to a degree, by Damien's very own spirit. The dark red bubble spanned out in an unyielding fashion. Ha, hua. Deep and bated breaths echoed through the broken chamber as Damien stabilized himself, his crimson eyes locking onto Rock's lacking any fear. Zahahaha. The look of intrigue further spread through the menacing pirate's eyes as he said, yes, those sharp eyes are what you need. Damien soon felt the man's voice grow dark and deep, no longer playful. Remember this, brat, he said. In the darkness of this era to come, only ambition can guide you. The haki struggle concluded as the rays of sunlight once again returned to the paradise island of Hachinosu. The words reverberated in the young pirate's mind, ambition. Zebek grinned, you're unlike Kaido, unlike any of the rest, I like you, kid. Try not to die too soon. The words were clear, you can leave now. Damien exhaled a heavy breath as he walked out from Hell's Gate. No one knew exactly what was in the sin incarnate's mind, but he certainly had a sharper outlook on the world than earlier. Rox returned to his drink, a quick thought escaping his lips. I Nadi Ares, the man lost in time, let me see how far your brat can go. Marineford. Is it done? A marine stood before the fleet admiral's seat and nodded. Now Phrygium Island has sunk. Kong nodded at the report from the rear admiral. How's Zephyr? The rear admiral seemed a little hesitant. He hasn't said anything against the buster call. The fleet admiral replied with another nod as if expecting the result. Send him orders to report to paradise for now. The marine accepted the order and scurried off. Kong turned his attention to the woman in his office, seated by the side. It was Vice Admiral Suru. Kong-san, Asahi's top sources just got the news that the monster rookie has reached Hachinosu and passed Rock's test. The head of the Marines could only give an annoyed sigh. Another problem to add to the mountain of problems. Suru took a sip of her tea and commented, even Cypher Pole has great trouble in driving in spies to any meaningful positions of the Rock's pirates. Black Death, Shaki is quite good at weeding them out. Kong just waved his hand, as long as we know their general position, all is well. He then switched the subject, any news on the other top guns of the Rocks? Suru nodded and gave a concise reply. The Golden Lion's location is unknown while the evil spirit is waging a war on some desert kingdom in the New World. Captain John had recently robbed a heavenly tribute ship. Kong massaged his temples in response to the news. These pirates really can't give me a second to rest. Another sigh escaped the fleet admiral's lips. Have our troops ready for war. I feel as if a storm is brewing. How warm, Damien thought as he felt the sun on his skin. The inside of Skull Rock was truly something beyond one's imagination. The awakened pirate peered outside and saw the hundreds of unconscious pirates. Nothing unexpected. Seeing Damien walk out without a scratch was enough to drive fear and respect into the gazes of these scum. The dark-haired pirate paid them no mind. He felt something new. He felt reborn, evolved. His mind was clearer than it had ever been before. The exchange with Rox had opened a new door in his mind. His spirit felt more free than ever. And the notification in his mind confirmed his thought. Conqueror's haki mastery has reached the intermediate stage. A thin smile spread across Damien's face as he walked on ahead through the island of scum, breathing in its miserable air. To be continued. Author's Corner. That's my interpretation of Zebek. The story needs a truly evil figure and it really does fit the narrative. Hopefully, Oda doesn't throw a curveball and make Rox exceedingly different from what I wrote him to be. Images. https://discord.gg/adishboob6q. Chapter 25. A Storm to Come. Published by Ranobes. One Piece. Path to Power. 2,100 words. 4 months later. Even over the previous months, the state of Hachinosu remained chaotic. New pirates arrived almost daily and a significant number died. The seas near the island were littered with corpses. If anything, it did well to keep the Sea King population well fed. Naturally, in turn, the Sea Kings did well to keep Hachinosu just as well fed. A graceful and healthy symbiosis. As for how the pirates lived, it was mainly through respect and power. Damien was able to obtain a more distant and uncrowned area as his residence, not that he was overly fond of living in such a place. It was a 3-story house made with old and rickety wood. From a distance, it was gloomy and decrepit, lacking life and spirit. Residence image, in Discord. Damien was currently leaning on the railing, overseeing the yard below. He had grown a bit taller. He was around 10.5 feet, 3.2 meters. A sky blue bird seated comfortably on his wrist, relaying information in tweets and chirps. So though the headquarters of the World News Agency is well hidden, there's been a lot of mention of it at Ney Island, Damien muttered. Ney Island, aka the news capital of the Grand Line. It was where aspiring journalists were born and bred. It's a good lead. Tail anyone's soul who even mentions the agency, he ordered the bird. Damien sent the bird away, spreading his words to all the latter's feathery friends. Whiz. Soon a black shadow appeared in Damien's outside yard, directly below his balcony. Shaki-sama has asked for you immediately. Supposedly Shaki had some trained personnel that were used for one of two things, taking out spies or calling on others to attend Rock's musings. Let's go, then. Skull Rock, Hachinosu. Shaki Ney, Newgate-san, you're both here, Damien greeted. An annoyed Kaido also sat at the side. The two had both been in a handful of battles in the past few months, none of which the future emperor could emerge victorious. And yet this had fueled his desire to attain strength. Damien was surprised by the pirate's growth. It was on par with shonen protagonist levels. Puff. Shaki sat on a high chair in the cold and dark room. A few rats scurried on by while the pirates remained in wait, a stench of death and misery surrounding them. Quote. Though there was no real sound, Damien could have sworn that he heard whispers of lost souls echoing in his ears. Creak. The beaten doors gave out a groan as they were roughly pushed open. A wild and savage man walked in as if he owned the place, embedded with the foul smell of death in the eyes of a predator. Rock scanned the room with his sharp eyes, a small grin appearing on his scarred face. Zahaha, he cackled. Shikiyaku, read the news you told me about. These words drew the attention of the rather tiny-looking woman as she placed a newspaper in front of herself. She cleared her throat and began to speak. An overlord of the sea has declared an auction in 2 weeks, and invited the greatest powers of the New World to his turf. She continued, alongside the treasures is one of the 12 supreme grade blades, Molten Blade, Mokashiroku. The words caused a ripple of emotion to show on the captain's face. It was beyond excitement, simply greed, a pirate's greed. It was not a simple, I want it, more like, it's already mine. The grin stretched on Rock's face as he let out a dull laugh. I've been meaning to take a nice weapon, and now it comes with the head of an overlord, zahahaha. Which overlord is it? Whitebeard suddenly asked. Eso Borealis, the user of the Logia-type fruit, the wind fruit. The words invoked a tight grip on the table by Whitebeard, to the point which cracks began to form. A rare look of anger flashed on the giant pirate's face. He then gazed at his captain. Rox, I have a bone to pick with Borealis, I will cut off his head. Rox looked over at the man. A look of mischievous curiosity passed through his eyes as he answered, Zahaha, Newgate, it's rare to see you like this. You can do whatever you want as long as I get that sword. Whitebeard gave a slow nod as he calmed down into his seat. Shaki then spoke up, the auction will be at his home site of Moor Island, 30 days from now. Borealis has a small crew of 40 personnel, and an extended fleet of around 10,000, she informed. Being a user of such a powerful fruit has allowed him to hold his own as an overlord of the sea. Naturally, he is also awakened. Rox didn't seem to care about the power level and Whitebeard was still lost in his thoughts. Kaido was giddy over the war idea as his body was quivering in glee. Rox eventually gave a simple order, round up the men, we'll set sail in a couple of days. With that said, he went up and walked out. Shaki sighed, knowing all the logistics would fall on her. Damien and Kaido stepped out to their own devices. Newgate was also going to leave, though he turned his attention to the black-haired woman. Shaki, last I recall your deal with Rox was 5 years of service, it should be up now. The woman glanced up and gave a small smile, I was going to wash my hands from piracy, but I found a reason to stay around a few more years. Newgate raised an eyebrow in return. Shaki chuckled, I just want to see how far he can go tilde. Yozora Island, Paradise. A young boy, around 2 years of age, was seen. He sat at the edge of the open railing that overlooked the dark lands below. He had jet black hair and piercing yellow eyes. Dracul Mahawk, the future greatest swordsman of the seas, was currently reading a piece of paper that flew down a while ago. Supreme grade sword, Mokashiroku, he recited in a soft voice. He then turned his attention to the hedge maze below. Mahawk eyed the silver sword still engraved within the black pedestal at the core of the maze. Astra has come. The passing winds were constantly cut as they produced a sharp and melodious sound. Yuru, I'll let the world witness your strength one day too. He then clenched his little hands with an unwavering gaze. Mahawk looked far off to the seas, his eyes piercing through the eternal forest, recalling a bold figure from his memories. An island of great forests in the New World. A large man sat at the center of a forest. He was wearing rather distinct armor all over his body as the mellow moonlight reflected off the shiny silver metal. The overall design of his full body armor was silver with golden stripes across his waist and the shield affixed to his right arm. He was currently sharpening his equally large axe as his eyes traced the daily newspaper. Supreme grade sword is it? My axe has cut down even grade swords before. I wonder how tough these superior swords are. His deep voice sounded out through his armor and carried on through the deadly forest. Though the only thing nearby were thousands upon thousands of bodies of large monsters, basking in their blood. At an island of snow in the New World, a large and well-built man stood at the bow of a ship. The ship wasn't overly large but looked quite durable. The sails were red, the frame had gold plating, the Jolly Roger was proudly printed upon the foresail. Captain, a pirate reported, look at this, that Borealis is auctioning off a supreme sword. The man whom the pirate was calling had a curved black mustache, a fierce grin, and intense eyes as he gazed at the informant with a surprised face. Wahahaha. That Borealis is selling off one of his treasures? Another sharp man nearby commented, such a precious blade, it sounds like it'll attract quite a few big names. The captain grinned in return, it's been a while since we went on such an adventure, men, set sail. 2 days later. Hachinosu. Damien stood beside Shaki on the Titanic, chatting. If any of those wastes of flesh try to tear apart the ship then I'll have to send them to feed the Sea Kings, Damien annoyingly said. It was the time when the pirates were due to board the mighty ship. Although the Titanic can hold an enormous amount of force, weight and pressure, it can be disassembled with enough tools. Sabotage wasn't exactly a rare occurrence in this part of the seas. Ufufufu, don't worry, Damien-chan, Shaki replied. I will be the first one to shoot some lead into their cranium if they try something like that. Damien nodded, then thought of something else. Should we expect some of the other Rox pirates' top dogs to join in the war? Shaki shrugged, perhaps. Those guys aren't exactly the best at reporting their statuses. As long as Captain Rox doesn't personally call on them, they're free to do as they please. She then briefed Damien on their confirmed forces. We have 3 divisions of 5,000 men ready to charge, leaving an equivalent amount to guard Hachinosu. They will be tasked to hold the Borealis fleet down while you big boys will charge at their main base. She continued, Borealis has 4 top dogs that he calls his cardinal directions, each with a high bounty and a bad representative to prove it. Though the captain said he won't participate, I wouldn't put it above him to not break his casual words. If things are too slow or too interesting, he will surely hop in. She glanced at the apprentice pirate and warned, not everything will go as expected, be prepared for anything. Damien understood the idea. Though Rox wanted a sword to play with, he was also a sadistic and bloodthirsty man. Things he found interesting would lead to quite a lot of death and destruction. A while later, Shaki-sama, a female attendant, reported respectfully, the pirates are on board their designated ships. We've located around 650 spies. Shaki hummed mischievously, oh, nice work, Amber. Let them stay, I was looking for a group of fodders to test the waters of Moore Island. Bang. She then shot her pistol into the sky, a green flare tracing the bullet. It was an order to all nearby ships to set sail. It was time to begin the purge that would wash away the pirates of the New World. The journey was naturally not a matter of hours. Moore Island was around a week of travel, which required a lot of food. Naturally, the pirates had to provide for themselves, with Shaki only cooking for the top guns on board. Damien was currently on the main deck of the Titanic with a pirate larger than life. Newgate-san, he said, that Borealis, what connection does he have with you? Whitebeard glared at Damien, you're really blunt, you know that. He then looked to the horizon of the passing sea and began to speak. Both Borealis and I hail from the same island, Sphinx Island. Just the thought of their connection made the man visibly angry. He breathed the same air as us. He drank the same dirty water as us. He ate the same rotten food as us. But he left it behind without a second thought. The giant pirate's grasp on his weapon began to tighten as audible crunches resounded. The government abandoned us and left us to the pirate's discretion. The furious Whitebeard went on, we came together as a people to provide for everyone. Many died so the younger ones could live. Borealis lived off of their lives, but the moment he got his hands on that fruit, he never looked back. The towering pirate then glanced at Damien beside him. Don't you think such a man without any moral code should be put down by me? Damien felt the waves of fury emanate from Whitebeard. Though he thought it was ironic, you know, most pirates would disagree with those words, Newgate-san. Such a casual comment dispelled the man's rage and he broke out into a laugh. Gurara, I guess it comes down to what we all treasure in our hearts. I have already set my sights on Borealis, he declared. Not even Zebek can get in my way of killing him. To be continued. Author's Corner. https://discord.gg/edishboob6q. Chapter 26. Moore Island, I. Published by Ranobes. One Piece, Path to Power. 2,955 words. 2 weeks later. Moore Island, the New World. The merchant-themed island has a very welcoming and pleasant atmosphere. A dense pine forest surrounded the residential areas with a large mountain range etched across the horizon. Image of Moore Island, in Discord. The forest stretched through around 80% of the island, forcing only the south end to be habited. A large city built with stone buildings and houses. The ground was stable and well kept as thousands of merchants ran about. 5 different docks were available for the people to enter. Thousands of people, countless pirates, members of the underworld, and undercover marines were present. The annual Moore Island auction sponsored by the Borealis Pirates was about to commence. The main attraction was the grand finale of the auction, one of the 12 supreme grade swords. Many days had passed since the news of the auctioning of the Molten Blade Mokashiroku. The auction was to commence momentarily. Dock Prime. A giant gray-colored ship pulled into the dock. It had a thick dull frame with blue masts that held together with the blue sails. The foremast had one word printed upon it. Borealis. The ship stopped as the pirates walked off after dropping the anchors. 50 or so men slowly flooded out as they cleared the way for the big dogs. Soon, 4 men of equal height walked down the ramp, each peaking at 15 feet, 4.57 meters.